Hello
Hello!
and welcome. This is, as you just pointed out before we started this, and then I got nervous somehow, for some odd reason. This is season two.
I think it's so adorable that you got a little. I noticed like your body got a little nervous, and I think that that's so fantastic because that's essentially why we're doing a season two versus continuing with season one, right? Like
Yeah,
things have shifted, things have changed. It's new, it's exciting, and
it
here we
is.
are.
It is. And boy, are we both different from
Boy,
a year and a half ago.
boy, boy, oh boy! Thank
So different.
heavens,
I know.
right? Listen, we go on the journey we need to go on, but I am thrilled that I am not the same that I was a year and a half ago or a year plus ago.
Well, and it was so exciting even. So Claire and I had a session yesterday, just get a catch up talking about, we'll give you a full update of
Full
I
update.
was offline, and we were talking about her upcoming move to Los Angeles.
Correct.
And only recently did you make this shift where it is real. And it is,
Yeah,
well, I mean, it's been real for a while, but you have logistics in place and
exactly.
you were excited. There was a lightness to it for the first time, which was really exciting and for me to see in you.
Yeah. Well, I think so. And again, we will discuss your being gone from my life for a week. And when I say my life, gone from all of digital life. Um, but during that time, I made it less difficult. And
Yeah.
I think that so one thing that we talked about is that when I decided to for the longest time I wanted to move back up to New York when I had left to go be with my mom who was sick in Nashville, and then I ended up being there for like 11 years. I bought a house. I tried so hard to make that work, and so it was such a huge move for me to leave Nashville and come back to New York
Hmm.
13 years ago now, 13, almost 14 years ago.
Wow.
I know.
Wow.
So when I made that move, first of all, I owned a home. So there's
Right.
big logistics with that.
Right.
I had to figure out, I didn't sell it, but I had to like rent it out and, do all the stuff. And then I wanted it to be a bit ceremonious when I
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
drove away because I was able to get movers to move stuff from Nashville up here. But I didn't want to just fly from
Hmm.
Nashville to New York. I like needed something more. And so I rented a car,
Hmm.
and one of my dearest friends at the time, Brian, he and I drove with my cats and my precious items. Made a 2-day trek, listened to Hunger Games on audiobook. Um,
I love the specifics of that. Great. Yep.
Thank
Hmm.
you. You're welcome. You're welcome. Um, and it just felt right. And so I think in my mind, the idea of leaving New York, I needed it to be like a bit more ceremonious, or like
Hmm.
I'm packing up and I'm driving. I was for a while thinking like, oh, I'll leave New York, then go to Tennessee, pick up my stuff there, and then go to LA. And it's like, well, I don't know if we need to do all that. So because ultimately, and I've said it for years, like I want to be kind of bi-coastal,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
lack of a better term. And like I don't want to, like, I'm not done with New York. It's just not my home
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I have decided to just simply get rid of as much stuff as possible, of course, and then
Yes.
put what I must keep into storage, and then fly to LA and just start figuring it out from there.
There are two things I want to say to this, and one of which is you just changed your perspective mostly. Like the plan shifted a little bit, but it's so funny to me that like, you know,
Huge. Yeah.
life just shows up through the lens in which we choose to look. And here you are making, and I did that, right? I did the thing. I had a going away party. I rented a U-Haul. I
Right?
drove across country. I made a
Exact.
big deal about it. I like did the thing because I was like, that's what you do when you leave New York and you go to LA.
Right.
And it was so funny because of course then I lived there for like 6 months.
Right.
And I feel like I more casually moved to the UK and then Portugal than I did like, I'm moving to Los Angeles and it's such a big
Right.
life change. And then like a year and a half ago, I was like, I guess I'm gonna move to Portugal.
Yeah, let's
It's
do
like,
that.
and I remember I was talking to a new friend when I was really triangulating a couple years ago between like, do I go back to Paris? Do I go back to London? Do I move to Lisbon? And she was kind of like, well, come to Lisbon for like 6 months and like sublet an apartment. And if you hate it, leave. And I was like,
Right.
right. Why? Like, it's so easy for us to move around now on this
It
planet
is.
and work anywhere. It's like, none of this has to be a big deal.
It doesn't have to be a big deal. I think that's a huge point. It's like now you can go live somewhere for a little bit. I mean, we have
Yeah.
the privilege of not having like
Yes.
a job or specific responsibilities that keep us in one
Right.
location. And so we
Right.
can move about. It doesn't have to be a big ordeal. And
Right.
there was a friend of mine was like, "Oh, we have to throw a going away party." And I was like, "I don't want one." Like I
Yeah.
don't because I don't see it as going away. Like it's just I'm moving. It happens to be across the country, but it's not, and like I'm talking to I may have a job back here in October. So it's like
Right.
that's ideal. Like I'll go September and then I'll come back next month for a couple days and then, so it's released a huge weight and a huge pressure.
Yeah.
And it's just made it more tangible and like, oh, okay. It doesn't have, yes, there's definitely some expense, but it's not as expensive as say the whole driving cross country and all that, which at some
Shipping
point
and
I
yeah,
maybe
yeah, yeah.
do, but not initially. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's also this other part of it as like in the entertainment industry, like New York versus LA, and like you're either East Coast or West Coast. And like when you make
Right.
the move, it's like such this thing, which is so funny, but and not real also.
Yeah, I know. And I think it's so much less of a thing now. It what
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
before the pandemic, it was like, oh, it was an
Yeah.
either you're East or
Right.
West Coast. And now it's like people, I mean, again, we're flying all over the place which is
Yes.
such a blessing. Um,
Yes.
that we can do that. Like I'm going to keep my manager here and I'm going to, like I want to
Yeah.
still be doing stuff. So listen, do I love flying in extreme climate? No, but that's just part of it. As we
Yes.
get more and
Yes.
more
Yes.
extreme storms and things like that, we'll just deal with it. But right now, we love it.
When speaking of, this is totally unrelated to everything, but like I had the worst night's sleep last night for a number of reasons, but one was, and I'm pretty sure that I was hearing really loud foghorns at like
What?
3:30 in the morning. And I was like, this is a new one. Because Lisbon's on a river that has a lot of shipping. And I was like, am I making this? Because I live sort of in the central part of this,
Right.
old cute area of Lisbon. And it's not that close to the water. And I was like, what is going on? And so I get up and I'm like, was that real? And
Right.
I go to the bathroom and then I was like, fuck it. Like, what's happening outside? And I go outside and it is like soup. The
Stop.
fog is so thick. I can like barely see beyond the apartment across the street from me.
Stop. And you have
So
a
it must have been,
gorgeous view.
yeah, I have a gorgeous view. I couldn't see any. It was wild. It felt like very mystical. And if I wasn't so tired, I would have maybe, I don't know. It almost seemed like it'd be thick and fun to like go out in and like you could part it. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was, I don't know where that came from. Oh,
I don't know
extreme.
either.
You said
But
something about extreme weather. Extreme weather.
extreme weather. That was it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
huge. Well, enough about that. We have to talk about your experience being off the grid for a week.
Yes.
Why do you want to do it,
Yes,
etc.
yes, yes, yes. Well, it is my second experience ever totally doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one was very different, but they both were equally incredible. 10 out of 10, I recommend. I
Yeah.
don't know. I may have talked about the first one. I was kind of in this, I was in an interesting spot. I think it was in 2022 I did it,
Okay.
or 2021. I
If we
don't
talked about it, it
remember.
was brief. It was brief.
It was after the first, I think it was 2021.
Okay.
Because it was after the first, my
Group.
first group program before the fall where I had a
Okay.
bunch of people. So it's
Yeah.
2021. And I was in this pickle where I really didn't know how I felt about where I lived in my relationship. And I was very, I was newly divorced, a year and a half, separated a couple of years. I just was kind of all over. And the pandemic, I obviously put us all on
Hello.
our heads, it felt like.
Absolutely.
And I hired, I through to be magnetic, which you guys know I love. They used to have like coaches, and I kind of didn't really know who to turn to
Mm-hmm.
because therapist wasn't really like I had a therapist off and on, but like that didn't. I was sort of like I feel very sort of like existentially lost,
Right.
and I remember this woman heard my story, and she was like, "You just don't know yourself that well. You haven't spent enough time alone. Like
Mm.
you need to go into the woods for 2 weeks by yourself with no human contact,
We did
no
talk
internet,
about
no work,
this
and
in
like
Maine,
unplug
right?
in Maine." So I only
Yes.
could finagle 10 days, but I did.
Yes.
And I did it with, she was like, you can bring meditation books, but like, that's it.
Right.
And it was an incredible experience. And I had gotten so much clarity. I felt so good. I felt so happy. It just was really interesting and creative. And fast forward, I've so many iterations of myself later.
I was about to say the
Um,
fact that she said you didn't know yourself, like,
right?
I can't even fathom the person I'm talking to right now not knowing herself.
Right, right,
You know what I
right. I
mean?
mean,
Like,
I did, but it was sort of like
you
you haven't been
did.
alone.
Yeah.
She's like, you haven't been alone. You've been in too many relationships. Like, you need to see what it's like just with you.
Fully cut off. Yeah.
And yeah, yeah, yeah. Because she was like, because I also was like in a perfectly lovely relationship in my late 30s, really contemplating like having a baby, and she was kind of like, well, if you were 10 years younger, I'd tell you to just like go a year without dating and, be by yourself. But like, I get it. And like, go take 2 weeks in the woods. And it was funny because because like, bless my ex-boyfriend, who's one of my great friends, still love him. At the end of this 10 days, I was like, yes, it's him. Let's do this. Let's have a baby. And then like,
Yes.
I don't know, 4 months later, I was like, so this is, so I went back to England and I was like, we're really going to try. And then like 4 months later at a meditation retreat, I was like, not this. I think I
Not
need more.
this,
And she was right.
actually. Yeah.
And it was mostly because it was like, she's right. I need to know who I am now after all of this. And, leaving the country, leaving a 10-year relation, leading like a 15-year career. Like, what did I
Yeah.
want? And that's been an sort of ever evolving process since 2019 when everything started to separate for me. And
Yeah.
it's funny because I think I still every year am changing and growing so much, and that is
Absolutely.
kind of my kink. I love
Yep.
introspection. I love growing. I'm so curious. I like
Ever
love digging
evolving.
inside.
Yes.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. It was interesting. Side note, and we can bring it back to this briefly at the end. But I saw the doctor who had put me on like the detox and all these things on Monday as a check-in, and we were talking about. He was like, there are two types of people. You can age or you can evolve. Aging, you can get,
Interesting.
yeah. And he was like, are you
Interesting.
interested in just aging where it's like, oh, this is my life. This is what I do. Then I'm going to retire. And,
Sure.
especially in the US, the narrative is like, get sick and die. Or
Right.
it's like,
Right.
you evolve and you just continue to, bloom and expand and learn and grow and change. And it
Yeah.
was really a beautiful way of looking at it because, again, I think especially being in the entertainment industry, being a woman, it's like, wow, after 30, you might as well like call it a day.
Right.
And I
Find a
just feel like
cave and just knit,
rot,
knit
just
yourself
rot
into a
with your
coffin.
cats.
Right.
Right,
Exactly.
exactly.
Jesus.
And I am like, I feel like I keep getting better. Like
Yeah.
I'm like better than
100%.
ever.
I feel
Better
like
than ever.
we also need to thank Oprah for being one of the first women just to be like, hey, it's better and better the older we
Yes.
get. Like, I feel like she was
Yes.
one of the more publicly facing, like adjacent to entertainment, but not in the,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
saying this is empowering. But anywho,
Yeah.
proceed.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's true. Oprah, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Oprah.
I mean, so much to
Oh,
thank her for, but nonetheless, I just remember her
true.
being like, 40's awesome. And yeah, it just makes me
Yeah,
feel better. Mm-hmm.
absolutely. And so I and it's funny, right? I think that the cultural narrative is, you study something, you get a job in it, and then you do it forever, and you have a partner, you stay, you have a kid, like that's your life. And as someone who's so curious, who loves to learn, my mom, when I briefly lived with my parents during the pandemic, watched me like reading a million books and writing my own book reports. I was like, can you go get a master's or a PhD or something? Like, do something. And I'm like, I'm doing my own.
Right.
But
Why do you need someone
I,
else to give you a degree? You've got your own info.
right. Yeah. Yeah. I really was at the point where I can't imagine, like, I actually obviously never intended to be a health coach. It was just kind of out of desperation to understand what was happening in my own body and to get a handle on, like, looking back, I still had some eating issues or just like body image
Of
issues more
course.
than eating
Yeah,
issues, and I think
of course.
being in that industry just perpetuates it
Yeah.
more and more, especially when you're young and you've had an eating disorder.
Yeah.
But it was through that I realized I healed so much more. But I never intended to go into any sort of. I remember finding like Marie Forleo's work interesting, and I thought, like,
Sure.
my mom sent me to a life coach really early on because I think she wanted her to dissuade me, maybe, or just like talk some sense into me about not being an actor. And I sat with this woman for
Mm.
2 hours, and she was like, I don't know, you're smart. People make it happen. Go be an actor. And I
Yeah.
was like, cool, yeah. Also, what's this job about?
What do you
And
do
she,
here?
she
This
was
is
like,
interesting.
what's this? This is cool. This was fun.
Oh,
Like, this is better than therapy because it's like more positive. And it
right.
was funny because she
Or
was kind of
just
like, oh, you can't do
different.
this. You're too young. Yeah.
Well, I feel like, yeah, being a life coach, being young,
At like
you need.
23, it's like, fuck
Yeah,
off.
no, 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 no. Even if you do have
Yeah.
insight, and you still need to
No,
fine
have
tune your
life
gifts
experience.
at that point. Yeah,
Yeah. But I remember then thinking like that was a cool experience, but then going on
for
my
sure.
merry way and, jumping off a cliff into being a crazy actor. See,
Yes.
just being an actor. Still, this. I'm not going to do
No
this.
judgment.
No judgment. No judgment. I will come back to this later because I noticed that I do this and I'm not doing it anymore.
Thank you.
So
Yes.
I early on, a few years into health coaching, really, well, people would have these problems. So I would just continue to be like, oh, okay, it's food, but it's also this. And then I would read a book on whatever it was so I could help
Right.
either give them resources and tools or give them support. So after a number of years in teaching my class, I knew a lot of different stuff. And it was boring to just, like, the food part was just the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, for us to really understand and get you present in your body and connected to yourself and understand what you want, well, of course, we need to make sure you're sleeping and moving and eating things that don't make you anxious or stressed or brain fog. But that's like phase one. That's like opening the door. And then, it just went deeper to, looking at people who over identified with their thoughts or limiting beliefs or, like looking at how we get caught up in our mind. And of course, I'm reading like a million psychology books, and then those turned into neuroscience books and mindfulness books, and then of course, so many people have emotional eating issues. That's where mine started, right? I'm such a
Mhm.
sensitive person. I had no tools. I didn't understand how to process these really big feelings when people around me weren't having them. So I just felt like broken and like, how do people human? I don't know how to do this. I just feel a lot, want to cry all the time, and everything's
Yeah.
intense. So, really having to navigate my way through that. And I just continue to grow. So my toolkit of how I could support people got bigger and bigger. And then, of course, with the autoimmune stuff and getting sick, and, here I have this big bag of tricks, which when I it was so funny. I had one of those moments when I put my program together that brought you into my life more,
Yes.
closely.
Yes.
I really looked at my life and I was like, I perfectly was made for this. Look at this
Yeah.
thing that I created that's helping women heal their relationship with their bodies and food and connect to themselves and get clarity and find self love. And like, wow, I looked backwards and I was like, this really strange circuitous route, like, really turned into something cool. This is what I'm going to hang my hat on and do for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Isn't it funny when we think that?
Isn't
Isn't
it
it
so
cute?
fun? Listen, but we have to have these strong beliefs to take us in that direction. And then in that direction, it may shift.
Hmm.
But we got to, you know, go head first into whatever
Right, right.
whatever we hope for.
Yeah. So after like 2.5 years or so of like diving deep into that, I mean, you don't want to say it, but I got bored
Yeah.
because it was sort of repetitive. It
Yeah.
was repetitive. And it was like, okay, I'm teaching the same thing over and over again. I'm seeing the same patterns. All of a sudden, I worked with a lot of people in a short amount of time, and I'm seeing the same habits and patterns. And like, how do I start to, what do I do? And then the end of last year, I was like, maybe I'll just get a job and I'll work for someone else's
Right?
company. Like, I don't, I had this moment of like, I don't know if I care about having my own company. Like, it was fun doing the Instagram stuff for a while. And I really think the tail end of like my performer ego really needed that.
For sure. For
And
sure.
I I don't think that actors or performers or comedians or any of us, that I don't think everyone's doing it for the wrong reasons, and I don't think I was either. But for me, it was such a healing and a tool for evolution. And I
Hmm.
felt like the more I healed and evolved, the less I needed to do that. The more I was finding fulfillment within and other things, and getting to the point where I'm like, I don't even need to like be identified with my brand. I don't need to,
Right.
I like talking and sharing. Obviously, here we are, but like, I don't know. I don't need to be an expert. I don't need any of this. Like, I
Right.
want to move to Portugal and like have a baby or a really simple life. And, I don't need any of this bullshit. and then that just, life is so funny, right?
I know.
Because
I
then, of
feel
course,
it.
I have like, yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm feeling drawn to direct us into, are we getting to why we're doing kind of a season two, or why are we just talking the
Yes.
journey that got us today? Because I
Yes.
think the main question was like, why'd you go on a week detox from digital,
I,
right?
yes.
So
Yes. Yes.
yes,
Yes.
just
Yes.
making
We
sure,
are
because I
getting there.
mean, listen, no, I know, and I don't want to, but I just want to clarify, like, what we're up to, because I mean, we talked so much about like your journey and going through, and like the change that we've had so much in this last year. So
Right.
I
Right.
just want to,
Right.
you know, see where we're
Yeah.
going.
Yeah. 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 You're like TikTok bitch.
Well, no, not TikTok, but I just want to be like, wait, what?
No,
I
I
mean,
know.
I took a minute and I
Well,
was like, wait,
I'm
what
sort
are
of
we
setting
talking
this
about?
up. I'm setting this up
Okay,
because
good, good, good.
it was interesting at the beginning of this year. I had a couple of job offers. I was looking at
Yeah,
that, and things pivoted into feeling inspired to sort of change the direction and create something for the first time.
absolutely.
uh, since 2021.
Yeah.
And it's been really interesting because I've changed a lot since the first iteration of it, of
Gosh.
my program, and even of
Hmm.
like it was my business, then it was my class in New York, then it was my program, and then I just was ready to do something else. But this whole year I've slowly been drawn to building this new thing. And it's interesting because I'm trying to do it in the most flowy, not pushy way, right? Where
For
it's not,
sure.
I think society's like, okay, produce. And I'm just not built that way.
No,
And
nor am I.
not
Nor am
at all.
I. No,
No, reflector, projector,
we're not.
we are not the workhorse. We are
No,
not.
no.
And it was interesting because I felt so lost. Like I remember last August and September, almost a year ago, because I was like, wait, I had such clear focus and direction, and now it's gone. And like, what do I do? And it was Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act, where I
Yeah.
started to look at myself as an artist again. And when I allowed myself to be an artist and look through that lens, which I think I truly have been the whole time, then it was interesting to think about evolution and what is my next thing. And, and so this year I've really tried to just be my own perfect client, where it's like, take care of yourself, listen to your body, set yourself up
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
the most connected to, what you, how you can be productive or creative or whatever it is. And towards, going on this funny health journey with this doctor, I just started feeling really tired and then really craved quiet. Like,
Yeah.
it's very strange. I had probably the most fun party social year of my life last year.
Girl, yes.
We spring
It was
broke.
like, honestly, can I just say,
Yeah.
it was your own going away party. Was it not? It was fully
Oh
your
my
own going away.
God.
It was
Oh
a long,
my God. That makes me want to cry. That's
right?
so true. I literally had my own going away party before I like metaphorically died at the end of last
Yes,
year,
100%.
which we have not talked about on this podcast.
We've touched on it a couple times, but certainly not
But
to the extreme
no,
reality that it was.
no,
But no,
no.
you had a going away
Oh my God.
party.
You're right. You're right. I had we'll go into it maybe on a different episode.
Sure, whatever.
But I had an experience in November that really was quite transformational. Actually, Claire was witnessing it on Zoom.
I was, yes, a witness to
Um,
it. Hmm.
and I feel forever changed. And I feel like there was layers of my personality and myself, younger, trauma based, or just, yeah, that I evolved out of, that really, she's gone. There's a version of me
Yeah,
that is gone.
yeah.
And even then it felt sad, but you're right. I had no idea.
No,
I went for it. I really
you
went for it. I had a
fully
great
did.
time.
Listen, it was a party of the century.
It
It was
really was.
months long,
It
but
really
yes,
was.
it was a party.
And it may or may not have fucked up my thyroid and my liver, but it's
Listen, but
fine.
that's fine because now, but then you went and you have detoxed and reset,
Yes.
and all
And
is well.
we're doing so much better. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes, indeed.
That's so wild. You're exactly right. I know. I guess I do have to talk about it at some point because we just like teased it a lot, which is horrible to do in these circumstances. I know, but
No, but I do
it's,
feel like, I mean, we have talked about it a little bit, and I think you have
yeah.
called it like a bit of a death or a
Hmm.
rebirth of sorts. Yeah, but
I
it was
guess I've
just,
shied. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
well, no, I think it was a very condensed, fast paced turnover
Yes,
of sorts.
it
Like
was.
we're all
Yes,
growing and changing every day, and then there was just a moment where the rest of
yeah,
it had to happen at once for you.
very quickly.
Yeah.
And it was, and I think I very much shied away because I'm very shy about talking about this sort of thing
Yes.
anyway. But it was very much an unexpected, completely sober, like we're
Yeah.
not talking about breath work or psychedelics, unexpected spiritual experience. on a
Yeah.
Monday at 4 p.m. on Zoom with Claire.
Yes, correct. Correct.
That really was the catalyst of, really feeling like parts of my nervous system that really made me feel like like what Lianna felt like physically, were gone, and parts of my personality that I felt like, it's so strange. The more and more you zoom out and you heal and you grow and you look at yourself, and there were so many parts of my personality that I thought were like really based on nice things that were like, oh, that's just trauma. I'm like this nice because of like attachment issues and like
Of course.
abandonment
Of
issues.
course.
And
Yes.
it was, it was really interesting, an interesting path, like end of 2023 for sure. But yes, I had a huge party to celebrate what I didn't realize was going to be the death of a very, 40 years of a one way of being. And then really stepping into 2024 has been a very different experience, physically, mentally, emotionally, creatively. And in this, the yearning to, because I started getting a lot of ideas in January up until about April, and then things slowed down, and I really was trying to be really gentle with myself and not make it wrong. And from there, again, the end of April, May, I started to get more inspired around what I was creating. And then I just really was like, I feel like I need to unplug to really focus, because I felt very stopped. And I was like, I'm supposed to grow in a certain way, and I don't know what way that is, but the
Right.
only intuition I have is to be quiet and
Yeah.
to like shut off for a while.
Yeah.
So Luciana, my partner, and I, she oddly enough was kind of shedding a lot of her own stuff and felt the same way. So we were like, let's make a creative retreat. And there were really no parameters except for nature, no phones, no email, no social media, not, unplug. And then, so I brought out 10 books. I brought like my acrylic paints and my watercolors and my oil pastels and my pencils and pens and sketchbooks. And, we had my I Ching cards, and she had her animal spirit cards. And, I was like, okay, we're just going to go and see what we feel like doing. And it was so incredible. We went down 2 hours south of Lisbon to the Alentejo, which is this beautiful region that's very agricultural. And we were like 20 minutes down a road, dirt road, nothing anywhere. But we sort of have this ongoing joke about bunnies, she and I do. So as soon as we turn onto this road, a bunny, like a big hare, goes across the road.
Stop.
Isn't that fun? And we both were like, oh, this is like very auspicious. Okay, this is good.
This is good. This is good.
And so we go, and it's this eco farm, and there are all of these really incredible old Portuguese farmhouses that are these sort of sprawling. It's like one level, and they're very long, and there are different parts to them. So they had transferred this, and they have a small farm. It's mostly like fruit, I think. And it was on this pond that you could see they had excavated into more of a lake, and then hauled in a whole bunch of sand and made like a beach. And there were like paddle boards and swings, and it just was like very, very cute. They tried very hard.
Yeah.
And there were like 3 or 4 suites where you had like your own kitchen, so you could cook, and a living room and a back patio and a bedroom and all these things.
Yeah.
And then like a couple bigger ones, and there was a pool, all the, nice amenities, but you're in the middle of fucking nowhere. We're like expansive skies. You're just seeing hills and like farmland or nothing,
Right.
which was like, we a little bit were like, okay, great. This is what we want. And then no one was there.
That's what's so shocking.
Bizarre, especially summer in Portugal.
Right.
No one else was there. And they were so cute. Breakfast is included, but you get to kind of fill out what you want. So that you could like, eggs or spinach or berries or whatever. So
you're not like getting a like room service.
No.
They give you.
You get like this beautiful basket filled with like produce or whatever you want. Mm-hmm. So we like went grocery shopping once, but then the rest of the time they just delivered whatever we wanted to our front door while we were sleeping. And we saw the people running it like 3 times. Like one time they didn't come at all. they're like, oh, personal reasons we can't be there. So I don't know. I've never stayed at like, it was like sort of like an Airbnb, but it wasn't. It was like an entire resort is like a little
quote unquote.
extreme.
Right.
But like whoever owned this was like, hey, here's our farm. Like, go nuts.
Do what you
will.
It
was, yeah. Like even when they were there, when they leave at 4, we'd just be there all night. You could like swim in the pool or go in the, it was just very like, how did we come? We wanted nature. We wanted quiet. Somehow we accidentally rented an entire farm.
Yeah.
And it was
listen,
excellent.
If you wanted to have an alternative story, this is a wonderful horror story.
Right. Well, I kept saying it. I kept saying that because it also, Claire, let me paint this picture. It was kind of modern, but a little dated. And then the landscape is very, it feels very out of place. So you're getting like stark white pool chairs. And then beyond it, you're just seeing these like golden rolling hills with nothing. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, oh, here are these 2 women by themselves. It felt over and over like the beginning of an indie horror, or like an indie 100%. Art house horror film. Because can I tell you, the only thing besides these, there were these one gardener that I saw twice, and then this older man and this younger Portuguese man, who the older man I saw like twice, and the other guy I saw twice the whole time. Okay. The only consistent other thing that we saw that we named Chris, I don't know why, Luciana called him Chris, was a robotic lawnmower that was going on.
I need you to stop right now. There was a robotic lawnmower?
Yes, robotic lawnmower that at night, it was on 24/7, except for one day it rained and someone put him inside and then put him outside. At when it got dark, he had lights on the front.
Okay,
so listen. In our back patio and watch Chris go up and down and up and down, and it was like silent. And it was so funny because it wasn't spooky, but like we had these moments of like, you could really like come and kill us, like for sure.
100%. Like, hello, this is now a sci-fi horror where Chris comes alive. He's a sentient being. Yes, 100%. But also, I think I would be continually freaked out with like randomly seeing the people that are supposed to be there, right? Like, the gardener on the occasion, like, oh, hi, you're here now. Like,
100% weird.
My brain.
Well, and then one of the days too, like we thought they were gone and we are like laying topless by the pool. Yeah. And he like walked by and then you could see he was like, oh, sorry. Like,
sorry. Well, hello. If you don't know when they're going to be there, that's even scarier to me.
I know. So it like literally could, and it was the landscape was so beautiful and such a stark contrast to this sort of modern but slightly dated place where it was like, really, no one's here? Like, what is this?
Okay, can I just say, I feel like I need to now write a horror comedy and we rent that space out and do it there.
Honestly, no one would be there. It'd be great. It'd be perfect. Plenty of space.
Wait, I'm obsessed. Okay, proceed. Sorry,
like, oh no, of course. Like, please. And one day I didn't even realize that, like, I don't know, Portugal. I know, Chris.
I'm like, Chris. That's a name of the movie, Chris.
And sometimes it was so funny because it would be so silent and be like dusk, and then you'd catch Chris out of the corner of your eye.
No fucking way. Oh, right. Lianna, you didn't tell me this yesterday. This is the most insane thing I've ever heard in my life. Was it like a fucking Roomba? Or was it like an act?
It was like a Roomba that was bigger, that had little lights on it. So, and then when it got dark, it was even weirder because all of a sudden you're like, where's the light? Oh, it's Chris.
I can't with this. Lianna, I'm dead.
I know. And it was so beautiful. You'd have these like incredible skies and sunsets. And there's this one like the pool kind of went onto this deck that was very like concrete. Beautiful. Like they tried really hard, but also didn't hire a designer. So that was also like, it wasn't like this is an indie film because it's
like
quirky.
Slightly off.
It's quirky. It's slightly, which makes it even creepier, right?
Yes, of course.
So you'd just be out there like staring, and then out of the corner eye, you'd catch Chris.
Here's the thing. I don't listen as a story. This is my favorite thing I've ever heard in my entire life. But I as someone who paid to stay at this place for like a retreat,
Yeah.
I think I would be very annoyed by the fact that there was a lawnmower going almost
He
all
was,
the
but
time.
you didn't, it was almost silent.
Okay.
So you're not hearing him. You're
Okay.
just seeing him, which is weirder.
Which is weirder.
Right? Because of course it
Lianna?
was on all the time. That would be annoying, but he's
Yeah.
nearly, you don't
It's just
hear
like
him.
a hum. Like you didn't
Yeah.
really.
Like, and
Okay.
you don't really hear him. You just kind of catch him every once in a while. And you're like, what's that? Oh, it's Chris.
I can't, I've never been more inspired.
I know. Please
So,
write something. Please.
this is phenomenal. Okay.
And that the other thing that I grew up in the woods of Maine. So if you're are always crittered, you're hearing things
Sure,
always.
sure,
Like
sure, sure,
it's
sure.
silent, it's dark, but the bedroom we had no, it only had a skylight just of
I
how,
don't
like
love
where
that.
it was.
Okay.
I know Luciana
Uh-huh.
hated it.
I
And I
don't
was like,
like
I think
that.
we're
Yeah.
gonna be fine. Really tall ceilings. It wasn't a small room, but there were
Sure, sure,
no,
sure.
so we were sleeping
No
so much.
windows.
And but you could hear there was some, I think it was like a bird or something had nested. So like sometimes you could hear things kind of,
Mm-hmm.
it sounded like in the
Mm-hmm.
ceiling. But again, like I energetically, this place felt really good. So it didn't creep me out.
For sure. For
And
sure.
like that, my intuition's so strong at this point. So I was like, we're good. But she sometimes in the night would hear this and like it would freak her out. Cause she grew up in, I mean, she has crazy stories about growing up in Brazil and like they had this farm. But I was so thankful for her because one night that we were kind of living indoor outdoor with this, we had this great patio. It was really nice.
Yeah.
And one day, like a spider, the big like size of my hand, which I didn't
No.
even know they had here. And spiders, Claire, spiders are my worst nightmare. They scare me so much.
No.
I'm so afraid of them.
No. Especially one's big as your hand. Shut up.
I didn't even. I barely saw it. She saw it and like went full, like knows that I can handle a lot of things. So spiders are not one. And she just went after it. And
Good for her.
I was
Good
like,
for her.
I did not know that this was part of the deal. So that was the scariest part for me. And then yeah, that was
No.
creepy. But yes, so
Okay,
that's the
this
so
is a whole-
we set up the scene. We set up the scene.
Thank you for this. It truly, when you were, so yesterday you were giving me a lot, giving me kind of all the details of this, minus the Chris and the workers, whatever. But while you were telling me this story yesterday, I was like, gosh, this terrifies me so much. Like this is so, but I get it with like energetic, because trusting your gut. You're like, no, we're fine. But I still would get creeped out at night or whatever, because I'm sure it was just, even though I love the stars when you don't have lights. But anyhow, okay, so I love to hear more of the
well, and one night too, we went on like towards the end, we went on there's the property had like a gate that closed that we had like a remote to. So one night we went on like a walk after dinner, like up this path up a hill that I had gone on a wander.
Also terrifying.
Until it got dark. And then it was funny because we were coming back and part of they just had automatic lights during that would go on and off. Sure. And part of like where this one terrace was had like almost like football, like inappropriate light, right? Like
crazy,
really like crazy football stadium energy lighting. But it was funny coming out of the dark, walking down this hill, looking at the entire property, like that was quite well lit. And it was the same thought in my head of like, wouldn't it be creepy if we saw someone in there?
You know of course.
I'm like, did someone climb over the fence while we were gone? Like, and the more and more like we were there, because I, of course, actor, I was such a horror movie buff for such a long time. I loved to scare myself. So at one point I even checked to see if our back, we had like a sliding glass door, but the other thing that would freak me out was because the lights were on 24/7, the back door didn't lock.
Bitch!
I know. The back door didn't lock. It was like it was like a glass door that opened. And then they had these like shades that went down. But because of this like one table that had stuff on it, like a coffee table, like side table, we would always put it like maybe shin level,
Sure. Sure.
And I tend to be, I don't know, it was crazy. We were sleeping like 11, 10 hours. So sometimes I would get up to go to the bathroom at like 3 a.m. That's part of my charm at this point in my life.
Yeah.
And I would always glance on my way to the bathroom and be like, wouldn't it be really scary if I just saw
Stop
two
it!
legs
Stop
underneath?
it!
I know. I just scared myself right now in the day.
Truly, before you even say, I was like, oh my God, I see it. I see the legs. I see the legs already. I cannot,
Right?
like,
Right? Wait, and can I actually tell you? So I'm on a call with my client Gina. I love you, Gina. Yesterday, and
uh-huh.
right in my apartment, there is like the living room has a cutout that has a balcony with
Right.
there's like a glass on both sides. So like they took a square room and they cornered off a square of it, put glass on all sides, and made a little like patio.
Uh-huh.
So where my computer is, you can see in the reflection of the door next to me the other side of the glass,
Right.
right?
Uh-huh.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it,
And right next to my patio, yeah, right next to my patio, I would say, I don't know, like 5 feet above and 2 feet out is someone else's small balcony,
uh-huh.
but no one really lives there.
I was going to say,
So
I've
I've only
never,
ever,
and yeah, the times that, and we're on Zoom and a lot, and I
yeah,
don't think I've ever
yeah.
recognized or noticed someone.
So I am on the Zoom with my client yesterday, and I'm chatting Chinese today. She goes, "Is there a man in your house?"
Oh
I
my
like
God.
turned completely to ice, and I turned. I'm like, "There's a ghost in here." Is my first thought. That is my
Of
first
course,
thought.
of course.
There's a ghost in my apartment, and then I look and I realize she can see a man on the balcony next door. And then of course I look and he sees me and kind of like sheepishly smiles or whatever. I was like,
Right.
"Oh my God, no! You're seeing the reflection of this guy." And then for the first time, I realized someone could climb right into my balcony and in my apartment from there.
Yeah.
And then I was like, "That's so scary." And
Yeah.
and the guys, now we're just in a horror movie because the building is under construction. So I don't really understand what people are doing up there. And
Maybe they're
no
just,
one knows. I couldn't tell whether or not I should say this, but I realized no one has my address. I'm not going to.
yeah,
You can't lock my door to the
yeah.
balcony.
Okay. Well, I don't love that.
And so,
Okay, so
when I'm hearing the foghorns at like 3:30 in the morning, and I'm like, "What is this?" And I go out to look at what's going on, I immediately I was thinking, "There's a man standing in the living room."
okay, we don't love this.
I know you
Listen,
didn't know
you
this
need
was
to
going to be the
get
horror episode.
you've got to get the like a broom handle or something to
Yeah,
jam.
yeah.
That's what
I
my
need
grandmother
two
had.
because the whole
Yeah, you need
thing
on
is
both
open.
sides. Both sides.
I know. I
Just
was
get
like,
some.
well, this is how. And then I'm like, every time I leave or I go with my computer, I'm like, this is how I get robbed. This is how I get. Anyway, I'm
That
gonna
place
make
is
that.
a very. It's a great look. I mean, you're all good,
It's
but
very
I
safe,
feel like
and
it's
it would be very hard to get in and climb over. But yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah.
But like,
I know.
especially if it's under construction and there are people, it's like might as well. Why? What would it hurt? To grab a
Yeah,
couple broom handle things from the
yeah,
hardware store
yeah,
and just shove them
yeah,
in the doors. Oh my gosh!
yeah.
Well,
I was
first
like,
of all, I'm
and this
so
is
sorry.
how I get murdered.
We've become this is now a horror stories with
Oh.
Lianna and Claire. But I truly like. I feel like I just need to write. Like you just need to write down the story of your
Right.
like all the quirky parts of it, and then it's like I'll just add in the murder. Like it's
Yeah.
just
Oh, for
like
sure.
all
For
of
sure.
the reality of it is setting it up.
Oh, it
That's
was
so
crazy.
This is
Spidey's the
crazy.
size of your hand. Chris
Stop
the
it.
lawnmower.
Chris
Like
the
it's all
lawnmower
there.
is everything. Like that's
I
right
know.
for a comedy horror.
Right.
Okay,
Um.
I've got it in my
So
brain. Okay, so let's
okay. So
let's
here we
forget all
are.
the horror and all the imagination, and let's go back to the
Yes.
fact that it was a lovely,
Yes.
quiet,
Beautiful.
lonely,
Abandoned.
digital detox.
Haunted.
Okay,
Yes.
yes.
The haunted digital detox.
Oh my
Oh God.
gosh.
So I mean, it gets weird in our own flavor of weird.
In
That
your
we are
own,
at this
yes, not
point.
scary
Yeah.
weird, just weird.
But just strange.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because we're both working on new like work projects. But
Uh-huh.
I really was surrendered to the fact that, like, now that I've identified, and I'm just going to put this out there. So I never wanted to kind of call it that. I don't know. Here we
You're
are,
having a
season
difficult
2.
time with this.
I am. It feels really vulnerable to share this because
Yeah.
I think I'm only admitting this to myself now. But my first, second, this is going to be the third iteration of my business, was all channeled.
Yeah.
It all came through meditation and in like a
Yeah.
download. And it's funny because I've been listening to a lot of Rick Rubin's podcast. I was saying this to you, where he's interviewing like a lot of actors and musicians, and I didn't think anything of it because as an actor, like, you're just this open vessel for creativity, inspiration. Like, think about even improv. Like, you just
Yeah.
open yourself up and stuff. Who knows where half that stuff comes from? Like, the
No
best
idea.
stuff comes when you're not using your brain.
Exactly.
And it's so interesting because I was listening to a couple of interviews recently, and they just always talk about that. Like, I don't know where the music comes from, and I don't know. So it's funny. It's perfectly acceptable for people to talk about it when you are looking at like literature, like
Artists.
fiction, or
Right.
painters, or like melodies, or singer-songwriters. But God forbid you would talk about it in relationship to like business or anything like that.
Right.
Because that's
Wellness.
weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Well,
That's
especially
really
when
weird.
it's connected with wellness, because I think there are so many people that take advantage of that, or
Yes.
or kind of use that as a selling point, whether it's true or not. Right? There's
Yeah.
a lot of falsehoods with that.
Absolutely. And it was the craziest thing. It was after and like, you can't make this shit up when you look in retrospect.
No.
And I had sort of primed myself for this because I was doing morning pages. I was starting to meditate more. I was on your favorite word, healing journey, 2
Thank
words.
you.
And because I had to go an alternative route because nothing else was working, I was having to sort of be intuitive about everything. So I was opening myself up. And I
Yeah.
remember one day in morning pages, I was doing morning pages every day. Julia Cameron's like long form writing, where you just brain dump, you clear your head, you complain, and then all of a sudden, like, your subconscious comes through. And
Right.
one day I remember I just sat there, and it was like right after I'd finished nutrition school, and out of nowhere came a 12-week course. I just outlined
Yeah.
a 12-week course. I remember sitting there and I was like, huh,
Mm-hmm.
that was easy. I was like, didn't know where that came from. And can I tell you, I thought nothing of it. I was like, this would be cool to do sometime. Didn't think anything of it. Literally, I'm in I used to work at this place called the Actors Green Room. And it was a networking place for actors, and they would do different kinds of casting director workshops and writing workshops. And so I would facilitate classes and help host things and do all kinds of stuff. And I was helping facilitate this writing class by this Broadway director who's fabulous, Kristen Hange. And I would have to sort of sit in and help her run the class. So it was like this, like, it was maybe a month long, like 4 weekends or something. Where I would help set up the class and facilitate it. And then there would be writing exercise during it. So then I wasn't a writer. So I would just sit there and kind of fuck around a little bit with my course. And just kind of, I don't know, I just do other things. I wasn't really thinking about it. And then she did this amazing thing, which I absolutely loved. At the end of the 4 weeks, she made everyone, there's about 40 people in the room, she made them pitch their stories, which I think is such a beautiful,
interesting. Yeah.
And the whole idea was they had to pitch their project, and then with the like, this is what I may need. Do you guys have either what I need or ideas about supporting it? So it was this really beautiful community thing where every single person got to be like, I'm making this short. I'm doing this one woman show, where everyone's like, I have a space. I have a DP. I know an actor. You know what I mean?
Great,
and it was so
great.
beautiful. And so she comes to me at the end and was like, did you work on it? Like, what's your thing? And I was like, oh, no, I wasn't working on anything. She's like, well, I kind of saw you. And I was like, oh, I'm just kind of playing around with this like 12-week nutrition for actors course. This does not apply to what we're doing. And she's like, no, pitch it.
It does.
And I was like, okay. So she makes me pitch it to a room of like 40 creatives. And she looks around and she goes, who would take this class? Everyone raises their hand.
Exactly.
So she turns to me and she was like, you email Jen Rudolph and you tell her that I told you that you need to have this class here. So I emailed Jen, and she's like,
Yeah.
what? I'm
Who
not
is
going to
the
give you.
person who runs the
Yeah,
actors?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Who
She
started
owned the
it. Yeah.
Actors Green Room.
Mhm.
And she was like, well, this is not really what we do here. I'm not going to give you a 12-week class, but I'll give you a 2-hour workshop if you
Sure.
want.
Sure.
And I was like, okay, like whatever.
Right. Why
So
not?
I do a 2-hour workshop. Everyone signs up for it. And the girl, I have like an intern who was kind of helping me. And at the end, she came up, she was like, I had no idea what this was going to be. I need to introduce you to Charlie Sandlin, who owns Maggie Flanagan, which is an acting conservatory.
Yes.
He's looking for someone just like you.
See.
And I was like, what? So so then like I email him like within the week, he's like, come to my office. I want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Because he was really building out this, like I loved it. It was really, he continues to try to build out this acting program that supports actors holistically. So looking at their mental health, physical health, emotional health.
Beautiful. Mm-hmm.
So he's like, what's your story? What is this? What are you doing? So I just tell him my backstory about healing and this and that. And I'm interested in, I did a workshop, da, da, da. And I shit you not, Claire, he looks at me and goes, do you perhaps have a 10 or 12-week course you could teach here? And I was like, as a matter of fact, I do.
Very funny that you ask. Yes.
Within a month of me one morning drinking coffee, being like, where did this come from? I am now in the next fall teaching this class for a couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the same thing happened with my group program.
Yeah.
I was like, I think I need a business coach. And then he was like, essentially like, this is the framework. Do you think you have something that goes in the framework? And then I was like, well, and then I looked at it and like 2 minutes later, I was like, yep, here. And I was like, where did this come from? So in January, when I was like thinking about these 2 different job offers, Luciana turned to me and she was like, if you could do anything, what would it be? And I had never thought about it, like at this point in your life. And she had a whiteboard and I was like, I guess it would be this. And in 5 minutes, I'd outlined this entire platform. And I was like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
And it was really interesting because it was like sort of the next iteration of what I was doing. And it was so funny. She's like, well, you have to do it. And then I was like, you're right. I can't do anything but this. I can't take another job. Like this is now my life's work. And then it was crazy because I would sometimes wake up in the morning, at 7 in the morning, have to get out of bed and write and work on it. So for like 3 or 4 months, it would get me out of the bed in the morning, and I was just all of it was the whole thing.
Excited. Yeah,
I was just sitting there, and everything was. And then in April, it completely stopped, and then things started to shift. And my intuition was like, I need to be quiet because I'm now blocked on the last part of this. And I'm like, I know it's about connection to self. I know it builds off of everything I've learned with my clients and my whole journey, but I don't understand it's physical health. Like it's the basics of physical health, mental health, emotional health, getting people connected to themselves. And then like, I knew it was like connected to, understanding what they're meant to do and understanding sort of their inner innate decision-making, intuition, just like getting people really understanding their body and what they need to do, but then getting over the hump of like the fear to do it. So I was working on it and I got stopped towards like kind of the step 4 and 5 essentially. And then everything dried up and I wasn't inspired and nothing was coming anymore. And then it was interesting. And then I started doing all these health things and then things started to come in again. Mm-hmm. And then it was like, go be alone. And it was so interesting because I was like, I don't know, now really fancying myself an artist and looking back at my entire career, especially with my business, none of this I did with my brain. You know what I mean? Obviously I did with my brain, but none of it came out of me. I didn't think it into existence.
You weren't like, let me come up with a plan of this and figure out what people need and what they want. It's like you listen. Obviously, you've taken in so much information into your brain by studying and living and whatever that it came from that.
Working with
Yeah.
people for the better part of 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it all came through like creative inspiration. And it was so
Hmm.
interesting because once I opened myself up to how I used to work as an actor or a creative, I was like, I would get connected to my inspiration and what I would want to do again. So I was like, this is so weird to judge it and like,
Yeah.
it's
We're not
crazy.
judging, but yes.
But at this point, I'm so connected to like what my intuition and, I'm on my, I hate saying path because I feel like, but I know what feels really right to me, like what's a
Yeah.
full body yes and what's a no. And I also know I've gone down a lot of no's and it's just,
Hmm.
that's how I got sick. And that's how, you exhaust yourself.
It just
And
doesn't work.
I know. I mean,
It just
and it's
doesn't work.
funny because you are someone who is exactly the same way. You cannot
Yeah.
get Claire to do anything she doesn't want to do.
It's, I mean, I have to laugh now because it's insane how
I
I
know.
physically cannot get myself.
No.
Listen, I do feel like previously, before times, I could force myself a little bit. I'd manipulate it
Yeah.
enough where I could, you know, but now, oh boy. And I think I was talking about this not too long ago with Ching, not to deviate too much, but
Yes.
I think so much of my life before was living, for lack of a better term, as a lie.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like when you're living a lie, it's like you can force yourself to do things to support that, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
like it's part of this. But then now that I've finally released that and the shoulds and whatever, it's like I can't, if it doesn't feel right. And again, I know that I speak from a place of privilege that I can do
Yeah.
this, but
Yeah.
nonetheless, it is 100 times harder, if not, I'm going to say impossible, to get me to do something I do not want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm there. Well, and the thing is too is it's not good for you. I mean, we all have to pay taxes and,
You have to do certain
take your
things.
trash
Yes.
out and care for your
Right, right,
kid. Like,
right.
I don't know what it is. But like when I was forcing my idea of life, I got sick. And I think
Yep.
a lot of people do.
Yep.
So I know. And then when I started to listen to the ebbs and flows of my body and the wisdom of my body, I got well. And the longer I sort of paid attention to both, the more you saw there was a way to basically float down the stream or swim against the current, right?
Right.
And we
Right.
know swimming against the current gets us nowhere. But gosh, I feel like I've gotten further and further off the reservation.
But that's where you gotta go.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just
true.
step by step. We're going in the direction we hear in our hearts.
And wait, I want to put a pin in this for 2 seconds because I thought it was really beautiful. You shared this yesterday. Do you want to share at all about what you felt like you were living a lie about?
Um, well, I think living a lot, I mean, just not being authentic, not even knowing who I was, like not even on a journey to
Mm-hmm.
figure out who I was, because I was
Right,
always
right.
told these are the ways you should be. And yeah, I have my own personality and, whatever, but like I wasn't living my life for me. I'm trying to remember
Yeah.
what I said yesterday. What were we talking about yesterday?
Um,
I mean,
well,
we
a
talked
little
for
bit about
3+ hours yesterday.
we
So
did.
what
We
did I
did
say?
talk for 3 hours.
Yeah.
No, I was just I guess leading to that really beautiful post that you made celebrating
Oh,
your
just
full
my
self. Yeah.
queerness. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that that's so much of not coming out and not um yeah. I mean, that wasn't what I was supposed to be or what I should be, or
Right.
being
Right.
gay. And
Yeah.
so that's been a huge turning point and very difficult to go back. I was having conversation again. I understand this is a place of privilege, but talking to a trauma healer and
Yeah.
Ching, who we've spoken of many times, but I realized I connected like the idea of going back to like having a day job, quote unquote, like whatever, whether it's part time or whatever. I
Yeah.
associate that so much with lies, fully living a
Mm.
lie. Because that was
Yeah.
my whole, like,
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be doing this. I'm
Hmm.
like, I had no desire to do any of it. Of course, who wants to,
Yeah.
there's a security to it. Yes, that's comforting and all
Yeah.
of that. But yeah, it's like so much of this just living a lie. And now that I finally have broken free of that, um, it's just so hard to go back to things that I just associated with like manipulating and lying and all of that. But no, I made a very it's interesting because with Pride
Hmm.
weekend and Pride month, obviously June, but Pride weekend here in New York, and I wanted to make a post. I'd been thinking about it a lot. I think there's a lot with embarrassment of coming out later in life, but also it's like, well,
Hmm.
it's the journey we have to go on.
Yeah.
Um, and then as I was getting ready to post it, it was like, do you want to share to Facebook? And for a second, I was like, no. And then I was like, why wouldn't I? So I noticed that there
Yeah.
was still a little bit that I was challenged with. But
Yeah.
I just feel like I had 8 conversations within that mini discussion, and we got sidetracked.
I know, but I just thought, well, I don't know. I just thought it was beautiful that you are at this point where you're like, I was inauthentic for such a long time.
Yeah,
I just have to be true to myself. And I think
yeah,
that comes with age, but I think
for
some people
sure,
never
for
find
sure.
it. And I
Yeah.
think that, I want to celebrate you for finding that and shouting it from
Thank
the
you.
rooftops. That's all.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. Okay. So back to the horror story.
Oh, Chris,
The horror farm.
the horror
Chris,
farm.
the murdering robot, who literally
Mm-mm.
did nothing wrong except for be an adorable, silent, yet slightly
Just
creepy lawnmower.
doing its job. A cog in the
Yes.
machine. Hmm.
If you can tell, I'm coughing because I had yogurt with dairy yesterday. Like
Oh, there we go.
I can get away with so little sometimes. Gross. Anyway, so here we are. I am now navigating my professional life in the most trusting, hands-off way,
Yes.
unhinged on
Yes.
sometimes. I mean, I still have clients,
No,
but I'm
that's
not
a place of
promoting.
judgment. That's a place of judgment.
Yeah, I know. I have a hard time. I'm
Yeah.
accepting. It's a hard.
Yes.
It, I know.
Yes.
I
The
know.
problem is there's a lot of people that overuse terms and you know go into this field because there are people who want to change and grow, and so they take advantage of that. And so I
Yeah.
think there's a fear that that judgment will be placed,
Yes.
and but we've got to, this is an honest, this is truthful, this is coming from the
The
most
heart.
honest places, yes, the heart. So
Yeah.
it's
And
justified,
also,
but also
yeah.
we
Go
can
ahead.
release that.
I think also I do just come from, the Northeast. I come from a family and a community of very elite intellectual people who value education and labels and accomplishment and
Science.
not, yeah, science and there's everything. I think education is incredibly important, and I did not grow up at all woo woo. So I think there is judgment that I place on who I am now, which is actually part of the story a little bit that I was letting go of. But yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
makes me feel like people are going to think I don't believe in science, or yeah.
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
I am, yeah, it's funny what you were saying about, living, feeling like you were hiding. And I feel like all of last year, especially like more and more doing the podcast, I'm like, this is not what I'm actually experiencing right now. And
Yeah.
like, I love X, Y, and Z, but talking about,
All the
nutrition
different
is
aspects of
so
this.
not
Yes.
important to me right now.
I know, but
Um,
that's so much of, also because you've been doing that for so long, and you know it
Yes.
so well. So it's like, okay, you're
Yes.
excited about the next step. And so
Yeah.
continuing those
Yeah.
conversations, of course, you're like, let's
Yeah.
move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Even
thank
though
you
it's
for
still
permission.
extremely beneficial to so many people
Absolutely.
at all times, but your own personal interest is moving beyond.
Waning.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, because it's not that complicated. Like, I've continued to read diet books now for since I was now, well, not diet. Well, they frame them often nutrition
Oh,
books. They make them into diet books
of
because that's how
course.
they'll sell. They like make them put a
So,
diet in. I know.
yeah.
But I've been reading nutrition books, I kid you not, since I was 20 years old.
Yeah.
So 21
Which
years of this.
and also from there, you weren't necessarily in the healthiest place when you started reading them. And so it's
No, no, South Beach diet, baby.
South
That's like the
Beach
best way to be
diet.
constipated.
You know, I bought that book. You know, I did all that
Yes.
stuff,
I
all
mean,
of the
on the cover
steps.
it said lose belly fat first. And I was like, girl, you got my number.
Yep.
That's what I need after
That's
the
it.
freshman 15. Oh
That's all
yeah.
you got.
Oh yeah.
One of my favorite, quick
Um,
side note, one of my favorite, say what you will about Anne Hathaway, but she is so great in so many interviews when there are comments about weight or
she
exercise
is.
or
She is.
whatever.
Yeah.
She's so good. And I know that those clips have gone around a million times. And one of them that I love is when there was an interviewer, he was asking about like getting ready for Catwoman or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like, what was your diet? What was your workout? And she was like, it's the boring stuff. It's like, we all know it. It's like you eat healthy, like green, vegetable, whatever, and you go to the gym. Like, it's not, there's nothing fancy about it. He's like, no, but like, whatever. She was like, oh, are you trying to lose weight? Like flipped it on. But I love that because she's just like, we all know it. We
Yeah.
know it.
Yeah.
We just sometimes we need it a little bit given to us in different ways or understand specific to us as you
Right.
individualize, but nonetheless.
Well, and that's of course why I got so interested in, things like trauma and addiction and emotional issues, because that's why people aren't doing the things they know to do. Because
Mhm.
not one, every single person for the most part that has hired me, if I was like, what do you think you should do? They would be at worst 70% right.
Yeah.
They're just not doing it because they're emotionally eating, or they're avoiding the void inside,
Right.
and they're stress eating, or it's the tip of the iceberg. But
I mean,
anyway.
who you talking to, girl?
I know Claire knows everything and still is like, meh.
I know it all, and yet I laugh in its face when I want to just
She's
live
like,
my
feeling good. Why would I want
not
to do
for
that?
me, Mister.
Oh my God.
Anyway,
Sometimes when you're at the airport eating like the sugariest treat you
my
can find, I'm like, is she doing this to make me roll over in the grave I haven't even dug yet?
Listen, I haven't gone on a flight since, yeah, I guess since Christmas. So, hello, I haven't had my airport treat. So next time I go, who
I'm
knows?
like,
Will it be a
this
healthy
girl.
or not?
If she's eating an apple, I'll fall over and I'll start crying. I'm
I
so
will too.
proud.
But anyway,
Hey, we all are on our own journey,
exactly. Thank you so
own
much. Thank
journey
you so
with
much.
that. No judgment, just curiosity
Right.
sometimes.
Fascination.
Although it is cute. When Claire and I do sessions, sometimes she'll show up and she'll be like, I'll feel like crap. And then she'll be like, because of this. And I'll be like,
I know
well,
exactly
I'm just
what
going
it
to sit
is.
here and listen because you know it's
I
I
know.
know.
I'm like, yeah, I feel
know.
horrible because this is what I ate. I didn't sleep. I didn't, It's like,
I scrolled on my
I
phone.
get it.
I'm like,
I saw on my
oh,
phone.
yeah, you do get
Can I
it.
can I tell you last night, like how good I felt
Yeah.
great yesterday. We were having such a lovely time. And then I took granted, I am battling this like head cold, which is very annoying. And it's a million
Yes.
degrees.
Yes.
My AC unit doesn't work great.
It-
Like there are plenty of factors.
Yeah.
But I was like, ooh,
Yeah.
I'm tired. I'm gonna like look at my phone for a little bit. And I gotta tell you, like, and then I ended up canceling on my plans last night because someone else canceled too. It was okay.
Oh,
But anywho, I found myself, I started like tearing up last night, just like getting
Really?
depressed. And I was like, Claire, what's going on? What is happening? And I was like, okay, well, you didn't sleep great. You also, I'm going to say you haven't had much protein today. So I was like, okay. So I went in, I made a little chicken. I like, look at me. But I said, but I at least now can quickly identify what it is. That's
Yes.
good. Growth.
Right?
But I was annoyed. I was like,
That's
I've been on my phone
actually,
all day.
that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like seeing
Social
what could this
media.
be? I also was like,
Yeah.
I feel like my
Yeah.
hormones are
You
off
know.
a little bit, which is also tricky with perimenopause because they come and go
Yes.
because I don't get a period anymore. So anyway,
Yeah.
neither here nor there. Is this going to
But
be a 3-hour
look,
conversation
she
that's
knows.
recorded?
I mean, it's going to be a 2-parter, maybe. They're going to have to tune in.
It's going to be a multi-parter. Let's be honest.
I mean, I'm now like, Rick Rubin is my new guru, and he does them all the time. He's like, everyone has a 2-part. I was like, I love this.
Yeah.
And this is season 2. We do whatever we want.
Season 2, we do whatever the F we want.
We
okay,
season 2, we do whatever the F we want.
Right?
Okay. We just set up the creative retreat.
We just set up the creative retreat. And I feel like you have to talk about the creative retreat.
Yes. Okay. So we go, and I have all the intention of just doing whatever comes. And it was very interesting prior to this. So I've been an art lover. My minor was in painting and studio art in college. I love painting. I remember graduating from GW and being like, gosh, I really just want to be a painter or an actor, which, everyone who doesn't have a trust fund's parents loves that.
I know, right? Okay.
I want to be an artist.
Same. I was art history and theater. So, I mean, it's like, hello.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Another.
Yep. And I was like, well, and being an actor seems easier than being a painter. So I'll do that. Which, to be fair, kind of is less lonely.
It's less lonely. And the audience is bigger for actors, and there's more versus you just selling one. I mean, there's ways to be an artist that is more profitable, but more options.
Right. You can do commercials. That's what it felt like. There were more options, and it wasn't going to be so lonely.
Yeah.
So in and out of my entire adult life, I'm always like kind of sketching and painting here and there. And then with all of my so when everything came to a halt with the new project, it was funny. Everything I haven't even really put this together, but until now, when everything like more like literal was coming through, when that stopped, I just started painting all the time. Mm-hmm. And it was really interesting because I got the sense that like I just needed to let go more and sort of like open up my creative channels and explore in other ways for myself and like really understand maybe the last part of this whole thing a bit better before I could finish what I was working on. So I'm like fully surrendered at this point. And if you guys will plug Michael Singer's book, The Surrender Experiment. If you haven't read it, it's so fascinating. It is a true story about what was going on in his life when he wrote The Untethered Soul. Absolutely read it. It will change your opinion on like letting your hands off the wheel. So here I am fully surrendered. So I bring literally 10 to 12 books of all kind of based around what I'm creating at my computer. I don't open a book. I spend the first few days painting and drawing. And then Luciana brings maybe like 8 books. And she last minute brings the Gene Keys book. And it's like this huge book that's like almost the size of like a phone book if you're the
you're
age when you remember what those are.
Right.
And so the first day we like have breakfast, and then I'm like, I'm gonna paint. And she's like, I really think I'm going to read the Gene Keys and like yours and mine. And like, do you want me to read it out loud? And I was like, sure. And I wasn't very familiar. I will explain. I was about to say,
yes, please explain what Gene Keys. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we know we had Erin Claire Jones on. We know that I am a human design enthusiast. Reading about
Me
my human
too.
design changed my life. Like
Absolutely.
understanding I was a reflector reframed my existence, made me help me when I pivoted careers, has continued to help me understand my own idiosyncrasies and those of my clients. It's an incredible tool. 10 out of 10, figure out what your human design is.
Absolutely.
Gene Keys, it was funny when I first came here, my first friend here brought it up and was like reading to me about one of my gene keys and was like,
Yeah.
oh, it's kind of like human design. And I was like, okay, I didn't really know. And then oddly enough, in November when I had that crazy experience, I it was pretty wild. And I was recounting it to Luciana, who obviously is a sane, lovely human who, when I was telling her my experience, was a little bit like, whoa, wow,
What?
cool. It's a little bit like,
How do I
hey,
process
wow,
this? Yeah.
wow. Yeah. And it
Yeah.
was a little bit like, hey, I've only known you for like 6 months. Like, maybe I should back slowly out of the room. It's a little bit of like,
Not that she clearly
yeah,
didn't,
whoa.
but it was just a lot to
No, she didn't.
process. If I hadn't witnessed it, it'd
It
be hard
was.
to like understand what it. It's hard to comprehend.
Yeah, it sort of was this emotional thing that was happening over a couple of months where I was really feeling like through a lot of like meditation and work that I had seen habits around my personality that I was doing unconsciously to keep myself safe that didn't work anymore. And
Yeah.
it's so interesting, and this will tie into what I'm talking about with the retreat. When I realized I had this moment where in September, I sort of realized I had sort of unplugged myself from the situation in this meditation. I did a cord cutting because I
Uh-huh.
couldn't stop. I was in a pattern that I couldn't get out of. And I unplugged it. And what I was underneath it was what in my mind's eye felt like this big gaping black hole in my chest
Yeah.
that was full of pain and fear. And it was just like my biggest nightmare, like subconsciously, consciously. And then I had this moment where I had a flashback of my entire life, every like getting glimpses of the feeling or the imagery of it, and eating a cookie or doubling down on my acting career or, texting a boy back that I shouldn't or having a
Hmm.
fifth tequila, where it was like, what could I do to shove in this void to avoid feeling this like core pain?
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about the work I've done for myself and up until this point is really just getting people acquainted with why they're what they're numbing and avoiding, and giving them the tools to deal with what's at the core of this. So as I'm getting to the last phases of looking at how my relationships affect were the last thing that were allowing me to avoid this deep pain, there was one day where in November it was like I didn't have any more coping or numbing mechanisms, and like I was having a really hard day and I was really sad, and Claire and I were on a Zoom and I was like, a couple of kind of strange things had happened and I was expressing this to her, and I was like, I just started crying and I was like, Claire,
Yeah.
I feel like this pain inside of me is going to swallow me up. And then it kind of felt like it did. And I was crying really hard
Hmm.
and like, I can't imagine what your experience of it was. Probably scary.
It was scary, but I knew it was like just let it go. Like just
Yeah.
be here, making sure
Yeah.
everything's okay, but just
Yeah.
it wasn't so I mean it was something unlike I'd ever seen, but I also it wasn't unsettling.
Yeah. Yeah.
If that
Good.
makes
Yeah.
sense. Like it
It was,
just it just was it was interesting because I was like, okay, this is like we're in this pool, we're in this like and me being
yeah.
just like almost felt like I was part of a fence of like, okay, I've got you. I'm like supporting.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
even though I was doing
And
nothing but just being present. But please go ahead.
no, but you were. No, you were. You were being very supportive. But what all of a sudden it felt like I couldn't avoid this pain that I think I had spent 40 years really building a wall around,
Yeah,
that in that moment it felt like it swallowed me whole. It was so scary. It
yeah,
was so painful. And what felt like it just was very bizarre because when I stopped, I was like sobbing and like in a ball in my chair. And when I stopped, what was on the other side of it was like a peace I'd never known.
Yeah.
And I remember explaining to you that it felt like someone had turned a loud radio off in the
Yes.
background, and or like there was a like you were sitting on a lake that was choppy and it was still for the first time.
Mm. Hmm.
And what it had felt like where someone had gone in and like removed my nervous system, that looking back as an anxious, like highly sensitive kid, had been hyper vigilant maybe my entire life. Maybe I came in this way, right? And it was really bizarre because I watched parts of my personality and things, how I used to show up and things I would used to do and how I'd connect to other people as just being a coping mechanism that I didn't need anymore. So all of a sudden it was like I watched a piece of my personality and maybe the core part of it, it felt like it died. And I slept for a week and everything changed in terms of
Yeah.
how I felt physically, mentally, emotionally. Food tasted different. I mean, it was strange. But I remember talking to Luciana. I was like, it felt like I got sucked into a void and died.
Yeah.
And of course, you
Yeah.
tell this to someone, and they're like, "Excuse me." I'm like,
Hard
yeah.
to
And
explain so
I
people
know.
understand. Yes.
And I just remember at one point being like, did I meditate too hard and like break? Like have I just gotten
Right.
too weird? But to be fair, like I went down that rabbit hole because the hypervigilance in my nervous system was causing my autoimmune issues and was causing my gut bleeding. And that like got kicked up again in my divorce. So I doubled down because I know what intestinal inflammation will do to you long term. So it was kind of this double-edged sword where like I truly was just trying to be physically healthy. But
Yeah.
in pursuit of that, it created this expansion of consciousness and shift in personality and everything, and really understanding and feeling of the world and my body and intuition and everything in such a different way that it was really strange. It like really has shifted my perception of reality and myself. But weirdly enough, so I freak her out and we're like totally in this like this poor I actually, anyone who is my friend in Portugal that listens to this, I just want to say thank you because I moved to a new country and I like spring broke. I like was so fun, and then I
Yes.
lost my mind. And I
Yeah.
literally spent the first part of my time in Portugal just like having a great time, drinking too much wine. And then the last like 3 or 4 months of last year, I've never cried so much in my life. And those of you who know me, I cry a lot. Like this
You're
was
right.
like
Right.
so, like how I still have a community of people that love me here is bonkers because like I was the
The
craziest version
journey.
of myself ever, I feel like. But with that, it was so wild because she then comes back like 24 hours later and starts sending me all this stuff from the Gene Keys that, and this
Right.
is where life is
Luciana. Hmm.
strange. Luciana, word for word, what my experience was using terminology like the void and having energy be sucked inside of you. And it was just like, she was like, whatever is going on, I believe it. And I think it like really has to do with something you're meant to do. And I was like, this is crazy. So then we leave the Gene Keys. Like it doesn't
Like
really
that
come
was
back up. She looked
interesting.
at it.
We'll put it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it sort of validated my weird experience a bit and was like, wow, I don't even know what these things are. So then fast forward to last week, she at last minute brings this book and is like, I just think I'm called to read them. So then she goes down and this rabbit hole of spending like 6 to 8 hours a day, like reading either out loud or to herself and taking notes and really like understanding the Gene Keys, which are, I pulled this up so I could
Thank you.
say what
Yes.
it was
Please
specifically.
explain what Gene Keys are.
So the Gene Keys is a system of personal development that is based on contemplation. The Gene Keys gets its roots from the spiritual systems of the I Ching, astrology, and human design. It's authored by a man named Richard Rudd, who is still alive. There are 64 archetypes, and then 11 of these archetypes are found in your genetic profile. So you have this sort of like funny chart that looks like a bunch of orbs, and there's like
Okay.
a prosperity path, a radiance path, and a love path, I think. I mean, I barely understand it. But the
Sure.
whole book itself is based as like a contemplative text that
Okay.
does feel very, as someone who is quite familiar with the I Ching, it's been in my life for a long time. It's a really beautiful contemplative text. And really, so she's reading me stuff that's like ringing true to my life and my experience and my growth that is sort of mind blowing. And it gets me to this space of really, there are two big things that I got from it. And each gene key has something specific, but my life purpose, and then like I think my biggest thing that I have to overcome, I notice the biggest thing I have to overcome, or my biggest challenge, I think, is fear. And it
Mm-hmm.
helped me to reframe what I'm building and look at my entire life. I am a teeth grinder to the point where I
Yeah,
chipped a tooth last year. I've been grinding my teeth since I was a child, which is
girl.
bizarre once you think about it. Like, because I did
As a
not have like bills
child.
to pay and like five kids,
Right,
right?
right.
Like, teeth for me is a stress related thing, right?
Yeah.
I've had like abdominal stuff. Like, I'll notice I'll wake up in like fisty, and and in
Not
my
right.
life, we talk about it. My mom always say, and my dad like wakes up and worries about things. So I was
Mm-hmm.
always like, oh, I'm like that. But especially the past couple of years, I will be like overrun with fear in the middle of the night. And my whole life, and I like thought it was back to like the hippo story when, I was like, oh, it must have been trauma from when we went to Africa when I was 11, or
Right.
like, someone
The
forgot me at
gorilla.
school, or right, the
Right.
gorilla story. Like, it must be that. Like, I always wanted to tie it to my childhood. But with this, there's a lot of stuff where they talk in broad strokes about humans and humans evolution, and like when we were hunter gatherers. And it was sort of like we're evolving away from having this like real kind of reptilian brain fear. And it's
Mm-hmm.
funny because in the past few
Survival.
months, yes, I've noticed that like I'm so much more calm since that thing happened in November, but I still have this intense feeling of gripping and grabbing and holding in my jaw and in my back. And so it was really interesting
Interesting.
to start contemplating that. And then also the other thing I thought was really wild, my life's purpose is all about addiction.
Mm.
And it's overcoming it and teaching about it. And when they define it, they talk about addiction to like busyness and
Mm-hmm.
addiction to avoidance of pain. And I was like, whoa, this at the core. Because I always am like, even like for the past few, even 5 years, people are like, well, you can't really just call yourself a health coach. Because I'm like, I do so much more than that. But I'm
Well,
like,
you do.
whoa, this is so real, because people come to me with eating issues and now all kinds of issues, but
Yeah, yeah,
avoidance issues, right?
yeah.
At the core, we just are trying to avoid pain. And
Of
it's the
course.
addiction to the avoidance. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
this is incredibly true. And then I look, and of course, like, that was my whole healing journey, your
Yeah,
favorite word again,
yeah.
was like literally avoiding the void. And they use that language. And so it kind of blew my mind. So I spent
Absolutely.
most of the time meditating because all of a sudden I felt really called, because I feel this real distinct difference in my body of like where my nervous system is now, this
Yeah.
real calm energy, and where like this almost ancestral fear lives in my body and in my like, you know,
Your
my
DNA.
nervous system, my DNA. And so
Yeah.
I spent all of this time in this really interesting meditative space, almost effortlessly, which we know meditation is sometimes very hard, especially in silence.
Certainly.
So it was very profound for that, in the sense of really noticing that that's my biggest block, and that's everyone's biggest block, right? When I
Right.
come down to the point where they're really connected to who they are and what they want, it's the fear of doing it and going outside the box and being different. And that really has been interesting as something to not take personally. And I've watched my body transform through things like meditation and somatic healing work, where I do believe that I can train myself out of this. And
Yeah.
what would life look like if I didn't wake up at and it was interesting because I started to have worse and worse sleep, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night with this fear going nuts, and it would, start with money and career, and then it would just go further and further and extend to just all sorts of bizarre things. And since we've gotten back, it's gotten worse and worse. But last night, it was probably the worst it's been. But the funniest part was my mind now knows better. It's not even getting involved. So I'm laying awake at 4 a.m. Actually, I tried to be like, there's a man in your living room.
Well, there's also a man in your living room now that there's. Oh,
Right? But then
yes.
as soon as there was no man in my living room and I tried to go back to sleep, it was like my body was so agitated and I was like in fight or flight. And my mind is like, interesting. And I want to read this because this was so powerful to contemplate that this is directly from the Gene Keys. And I think it's really
Okay.
beautiful.
Okay.
And this is the thing that I didn't realize that I like with what I do with clients, I have this such a deep understanding around, you feel your feelings. The other to get
For
through
sure. For sure.
happy, sad, anything, you got to feel those hard feelings.
Right.
But the thing about, especially this fear that we all have, that middle of the night fear about the future, you can't just feel that because then you go down the rabbit hole of it,
You go
right?
down the
Like
rabbit
welcoming
hole. You're more and more
and
awake.
like right. And you're full, and all of a sudden it makes it worse. Like
Yeah.
that's not a feeling you can feel because it's almost this reptilian part of you.
Yeah.
And this was like a game changer for me. I love it. Okay. It doesn't matter where your projected fear hides. It could be your fear of being alone, your fear of not having enough money, or your fear of running out of time. Deep within you lies a self-sustaining and unlimited resource that can always provide a solution to your imagined fear. These solutions come to you when you arrive at the moment of fear. And this is what I love. And I'm trying to practice at 4 a.m, which is not always easy.
No.
But when you arrive at the moment of fear, open, unreactive, vulnerable, and unknowing. It is through your unknowing that the pearl will be delivered to you. So you must neither repress nor react to your fear. You must simply sit with it.
How do you
This state
not?
of surrender into not knowing is the answer. Oh, yeah, go for it. Go for it.
How do you
How do you
sit with
not?
it and not like let it take over?
I think you accept it
Okay.
and you don't. Okay. Like, I know, well, this is the thing I've been contemplating and working on. I'm getting better at it. But when a fear arises, especially one that is, this is my take on it, right? This is
Okay.
this is where
Sure.
I'm at.
Sure.
So, I'm
Sure.
not, I'm only an expert in my own experience.
Of course.
So when a fear comes up that whether it's real or not, even, and so many of
Hmm.
the fears you can talk yourself into, right?
Absolutely.
Instead of the fear will arise and you can be like, oh my God, you're right. I don't have enough money. Where's the next thing coming from?
Right.
And you can go through all the reasons why you don't have enough. And then you can start to go down the rabbit hole of, well, I should do this and I should do that. And I need to go here and I should call
Right.
this person and I need to ask for this or ask for that. And as we know, and I think it's Einstein, right? You can't solve the problem at the level of the problem. So you're in
Sure.
an agitated, fear-based state and trying to figure your way out of it. There's no solution there, right? You're just panicking and spiraling further into the panic or agitation.
Yeah.
With it, especially in the middle of the night, I am just looking at it like, hey, you're a house guest. I appreciate that you are here. I am not going to go down the thoughts. I'm not going to give in to the fear. I am just going to, what I start to do in my body, and this is what I was doing in the meditations. And this has been a really interesting because it's now non-doing for the first time when, culture and everything is like, do. You go to therapy, you feel your
Yeah.
feelings, even with like Joe
Fix it.
Dispenza
Fix it.
meditations, like you elevate your emotions. It's a doing. And with fear, it's a non-doing.
Uh,
It's, okay, I see that you're here. I
mhm.
witness physically how I respond. My jaw is tight. My hands are tight. My stomach is tight. My shoulders are tight. And I just start to, you're welcome here, whatever you are. I'm not going to think about you. I'm going to go into my body and I'm going to start to relax my jaw. I'm going to start to unfurl my fists. I'm just going to start to almost retreat and shift my focus into peace. And
Mm.
sometimes it takes a really long time, but I
Yeah.
fall back asleep. or
Okay.
it dissipates, right? And
Okay.
it's really about shifting your focus into like the reality and to the peace and what you actually want to feel. And it goes away because in during the day, like of course you're going to be scared, and of course sometimes you're going to have to figure out solutions. I'm not saying you won't have to, but this is like the
Course.
fear that takes us over, that comes in the middle of the night, or that spirals you in the middle of the day, where
Hmm.
you become completely paralyzed, right?
Just consumed with it.
So
Yeah.
in that moment, instead of fully going down that rabbit hole and trying to continue to spiral forward, it's okay, you're here, I'm here with you. I'm because again, the same time when we try to shove it away, it makes it, whether you're welcoming it in or pushing it away, it's the same effect, right? You just
Absolutely.
spiral.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I'm going to allow you to be here and I'm going to shift my focus and I'm almost going to relax away from you.
I mean, it almost makes me think of like in the initial explanation of meditation, right? It's like when you have a
Mm-hmm.
thought of anything, it's like you acknowledge and you let it
Yes.
go. Like it's that kind of. It's
Yes.
very
Yes.
tricky to like figure out in your mind like how to do
Yes.
that, but yeah,
Yes.
that's what it sounds like in a more weighted way.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's being like, and again, like I always say, it's curiosity instead of judgment. It's
Hmm.
like, oh, wow, this is a part of my brain that's going to do this, right? This is a
Yeah.
part of my human experience. And like, I don't have to take this to be true. It's the same as like not believing our thoughts, right?
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
we have a million billion thoughts a day. And I used to say this a lot to my clients. I remember when I lived in off the Graham stop of the L in Brooklyn, it was my
Hmm.
favorite apartment. My railroad apartment, we had only one sink in our 30s. Like, it was
Lord have
so bad.
mercy. What
No
we put
bathroom
up with.
sink. Oh my God, New York is so crazy. I know. But every time I went to go out, we lived on the second floor of a walk up. I would leave to go to an audition in heels. My first thought was always, you're going to eat shit and fall down the stairs and die. And
Yeah.
I never did because I know how to walk in high heels and I understand how stairs work. But if I got to the audition on the other side and I was really nervous, I might believe that I don't know my lines even when I do. And when I
Yeah.
would believe I didn't know my lines, I would flub. But if
Yep.
I believed I did know my lines, I wouldn't. Right.
You'll be fine.
And it
Yeah.
was like, you're going to have a million thoughts. Whatever you put energy into is going to help create your reality.
Right.
And understanding fear and that kind of fear, that I really just thought like, oh, I'm just a scared person, or I'm just someone with a lot of anxiety. No, this is a human thing that maybe I have a bit more of,
Right.
but it's just a relationship to anything else that I can decide not to engage in. And I can shift my perspective on it and not take it on.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
No, it does. It absolutely does. It's a hard thing to conceptualize and to do, but once you're in it and you're just like, okay, I'm acknowledging
Yes.
and I'm setting, it's it with practice.
Yeah.
It's just with practice.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was really interesting. And then there were two other things that the Gene Keys talks a lot about, which I really, really loved. One is that we all come to, be as humans with equal gifts. They're all different,
Yes.
but they are all, whatever your specific thing is as good as anyone else's. And it's kind of just your job to figure that out. And I
Yeah.
couldn't believe that more. And there is in no universe when we're all living fully, living in our gifts, accepting whatever you want to call it, like performing them, living in alignment with them. I don't know how he calls it, but
Sure.
if I'm doing that, it doesn't do anything except enhance everyone's life. There's
Yeah.
no
Right.
universe where I'm in my gifts and you're in your gifts and anyone's taking from anyone else. It only adds.
It
And
just
my expression
enhances.
of being fully in my gift makes the world a better place
Yes.
and makes you
Correct.
healthy and happy. And
It's not a
so much,
selfish
there's
act.
so much emphasis around play. No, not at all. It's selfless, if anything, right?
Indeed. Indeed.
And a lot of it, so here I am a week straight only hearing someone read to me about this and being really open to it. And it's really beautifully written. He's a poet, the guy who came to the system is really
Yeah.
interesting. And he's got a British accent, so he also records contemplation. So we're listening to some of his stuff. Really,
Okay.
really beautiful. And he talks a lot about joy and fun and play, which I really agree with. I think that's a great
Yeah.
way to learn and heal as well. And the other thing he talks a lot about is that everything's always perfect. Like you
Mm.
never fucked it up, right? You
Yeah.
always did it right. Everything's always perfect. Like stop worrying about that. And like you're whatever you do for better or worse was the right thing, even if it led to something difficult in the moment, right?
Right.
And the
Right.
unburdening of that I think is really really amazing, because even though we may make mistakes and go through hard periods of our life,
Yeah.
often you turn around and they do lead to beautiful things, they do lead to growth, and the pain does often lead to something more beautiful.
Absolutely.
So that to me was a really fun moment, and we decided to take some mushrooms one of the afternoons, and like we were really intentional. I don't do it very often, but it was like we really were thinking about like the contemplation. It was like, okay, what would you like to get more out of like what you're learning, and what would,
Yeah.
we both, meditated, set intentions, took mushrooms, like we're total hippies about it. Then ran around like topless in our bikinis in the swimming pool. It was great.
For Chris.
But the biggest thing for Chris's sake, and for what we realized later were like the security cameras.
I'm sure.
I know that would have been the point, right? But that would have been the moment when something crazy, like in the movie, right? It's like,
of course.
Did you ever see the movie The Strangers with Liv Tyler?
I don't watch scary movies. My brain is enough.
Yeah, mine, obviously I like fear. I'm addicted to it, as we're hearing.
No,
but
I'm addicted to it too. But it's in my own brain. I don't need others.
So there's a scene in this movie where it's like a really scary nighttime scene, and then they survive, right? So you almost think they're like in the clear, and then it gets extra scary because they come back and like it takes a really bad turn the next day during the day.
During the day. That's what I was thinking.
During the day. And I remember being like, oh my God, this is so much scarier. Never do you see like the murderer or whatever coming back during the day. So that would have been the perfect moment. Like we're in the pool, all silly on mushrooms, and in the day at 4 p.m.
And the turn.
Anyway.
Chris, the Roomba
and it turned out
mower comes out. Okay.
I know. Anyway. So with this very intentional psilocybin experience, I come to something that sort of broke my heart that I feel is important to share as a woman, because I think a lot of us have this. And maybe just they say in TBM or in shadow work in general, right? When you notice a part of yourself where you hide or you're embarrassed, when you say it out loud, it helps dissolve that, right?
Absolutely.
So this is sort of me outing my shadow a little bit. And I still found myself doing it to this day on this podcast. But I had this moment where I'm like, we've been reading this book all week, and it's like, okay, everyone has unique gifts that are amazing. Everyone is so different. Like, no one else knows what anyone else should be doing, right? Like, I don't know what your experience is. I don't understand, how, I mean, I do. I was going to say, I don't understand your gifts. I very much understand your gifts. And
Mom.
feel like,
yeah,
yeah, of course. But it's one of those things where you really can't weigh in, or anyone who has ever said anything to you, really, they can only give from their experience, right? Like, we don't know what other people need. No one, like the idea that culture or school or your family or your peers like weigh in, they're only coming from their experience, and that's it, right? So no one really knows what's best for you but you, which I always say. And if everything's always perfect and it's right, I had this moment of like, I have all this fear about this new phase of my life, really like being in tune to my intuition, my gifts, like really channeling this next project, like approaching it like an artist, using like my creative channel, like allowing it to be a bit more holistic and a bit more spiritual. I've had so much shame around that and judgment around that. And then I looked at my whole life where it's like, everything from like growing up less white in a very white place to like, oh, I know I'm different. And like, well, I remember we went to Turkey in high school, and like I went to school with a bunch of like kids from Maine who were like, where did you go on your family holiday? And me being
Right.
like, oh, my weird family, you know what I mean? Like making excuses and
Well, you
then
were
going
always
in and like being
an
an actor
other.
and like making jokes about that.
Right.
Right. I've always been.
Hmm.
Always. I'm divorced. And like I was a comedian. So I literally, to fit in, like I've made myself the butt of every joke. I'm overly sensitive. So I'm always the one that's crying. So like, let's make fun of me first before you guys make fun of how sensitive I am, or you make fun of how weird I am, or you make fun of, it breaks my heart now. It's like, I have always, at this point, I'll do whatever, like you, much like you, I'll do what I want. I do what feels right to me. That's it.
Yeah.
But my brain is still sometimes telling me I'm wrong. And I'm still
Mm-hmm.
sometimes making myself the butt of a joke, and I'm weird and it's different and it's not. And I was like, wow, I'm 41 years old. And like, I know for a fact that what you put out and what you attract in life is entirely based on how you perceive yourself and the world. How am I not on my own team at this point?
Right.
The amount of therapy and work and what I know, like I know better. How come
Hmm.
I'm not on my own team? Like I'm already doing what I want and it's already quote unquote weird. And it's like, who cares? This is I love who I've become. Like I have this incredible life. How come I can't just be proud of that and be like, you know what? This is what I'm doing. This is who I am now. And I was like, fuck it. I am. From now on, here I am talking about all of this stuff openly to
Yes.
all 5 of you who listen. And see there, I'm doing it again. To all 5 million of you who listen. But,
Hmm.
you know, it really, there is a profound shift, which is why I think mushrooms can be really beautiful when used correctly and
Yeah.
intentionally to really shift and heal things. But, never again. This is what I'm doing. This is what I believe in. I've watched myself help so many people. I've watched myself heal my body. I watched myself change other people's lives. And no, this is what I believe in. This is what I'm doing. And I have a creative take on it. And I'm an artist and this is my art. And I don't care that it's weird and different. And here I
Yeah.
am, world. Season
Here you
2.
are. No, I love it. I think that there's a healthy, I mean, obviously I make fun of myself as well. I think there's like there's a happy medium of like not taking yourself too seriously and being like
Right.
knowing what you're saying, no matter whether it's me talking about pain or stupid,
Yes.
whatever, but it's like, knowing the humility of it all, right? But then there's also a judgment that it's not
Yes.
right.
Yes.
And those are two different things. So I think that there's
Yes.
still like, we can
Yes.
poke fun and we can make light of how it
Of
could seem
course.
to
Oh my God.
someone, but that doesn't mean that it's
Yes.
wrong. It doesn't mean that it doesn't feel authentic, right? So it's like you're on your own team. We could still make jokes of it, if that makes sense.
Yes. You permission to make fun of me, everyone, and
Well, no,
me.
I'm not
But
saying that.
I
I'm
realized
saying
that
like
most of it,
we're just not taking
I'm
ourselves
kidding.
so seriously.
No, no. But I realized looking back that the core of it was shame.
Absolutely.
And I really there's a piece of me where it was like, I'm still not trusting and believing in myself
No.
at this point in my life when like, what do I have to lose? It's not like I'm gonna do something different. It's like either I do what I'm doing and suffer and self-flagellate and judge, or I just decide to get on board with myself for the first time and like own it and just decide that it's perfect and I'm making the right
That's it.
decision and perfectly imperfect, right? Because nothing's perfect.
Right.
And yeah,
Or
I
it
mean, it
or
just
it's
made
all
me realize how
perfect.
much
Like the Gene Keys guy said.
right. 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 Where it's like how much energy goes into me worrying and judging and keeping it small or bringing it back to what you said, like how bad it feels to live this inauthentic version of you because you don't feel
Gosh.
comfortable being a fully expressed version of you.
God, that's exhausting.
It is. It is. And I had obviously two funny things quickly that happened upon
Girl,
returning,
quickly.
which
We're
once you
beyond
go from
quickly.
like the um that was so interesting. It was obviously coming back from like, nothingness and no. Oh, actually, four things.
Okay, four things. Okay.
um for the record, coming off of like dropping out of society for a little while is harder than you think. It was like when I was alone and did it, it
Oh,
was
I'm
so nice to
sure.
see people. But in this space where it was just kind of like unplugged, it was so nice. But I really noticed when I turned on my phone and the first thing I looked at was my WhatsApp and I had like,
Yep.
I don't know, 15, 20 messages. The amount, like the
Whew.
reaction, the emotional chemical reaction in my body was so bad.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
got afraid and it might like panic, people pleasing, like the immediate urge to respond to everyone as fast as I could. I was like, even though I told everyone I was going offline,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
crazy.
No, that
And
just stressed
then
me out, the
awful.
idea.
Like I
Uh-huh.
immediately, oh, it fully took my peace. And I was like, God, our phones are toxic. And the next day I opened Instagram and it was like worse. It was
Worse.
like
Hmm.
the feeling you get when you like text someone you're not supposed to and you're like dying for them to text you back. It's
Yeah.
like almost that rush of like weird cocaine energy or something where it's
Yeah.
like it
Yeah.
feels bad and good at the same time. And
Hmm.
I'm now really wondering, part of me wants to delete all of my social media. I'm on the fence. I might do it for a little while. I don't know, but
Would you
I
want to
really
limit,
like
like,
the desire to go
say,
back on is low.
like, if you only give yourself 30 minutes or an hour a day and that's it, you can limit it on the app itself.
Yeah. Well, I'm just not even going on it as much. Like people
I
send
mean,
me stuff and I
don't,
don't
but
care. Like I don't want to look at it. Like,
no, I think
yeah,
that's fine. But it's like, if you
yeah,
wanted to be like, okay, I'm not ready to give it up entirely, but like, I know that I will only do it between 2 and 3 in the afternoon. And that's it. As opposed to
yeah,
just like,
yeah. I mean, I'm not good with rules. I'm
I'm
not,
not either. You know
yeah,
that,
yeah.
but I'm just throwing that
No,
out there.
yeah, rules are not, I'm like, yeah, no. I mean, it's already kind of limiting itself, but it was interesting because that combined with like having a little bit of alcohol, I had some sugar, gluten, and dairy.
When
And
you
it was
came back,
like
yeah.
my connection to my creative channel. Yeah. Within like 24 hours, it was so much harder to connect to everything with the noise of the phone and the social media and foods that don't make me feel my best and kind of fog my brain out. And I knew all of these things, but the contrast was so stark that
Oh
it
boy.
made everything less attractive,
Yeah.
which was, of course, like what I say, like, and everyone's body's different. You're going to have a different relationship to all that stuff. But the more I think that's really why, like, whether it's the sugar detox or a digital detox or anything where you're intentionally like limiting or taking things out and putting things back, seeing the effect that they have, especially your phone, it's so wild. It
Whew.
was so dysregulating. I didn't even look. I went to like post a picture on my Instagram. I didn't look at the message. I didn't look through the feed. I had to like calm down afterwards. It was so
Yeah.
dysregulating. I was like,
Yeah.
whoa, I've come from such an extreme place of peace that this was just such an injection of like adrenaline that was not nice. It was
No.
shocking to me how bad it was. Like you knew it was bad, but I knew it was really bad.
Well,
But
that's such a
then the other
contrast.
two things that I just think are such a contrast,
And there is a
such a
trend
contrast.
right now of the younger generation getting like flip phones. There's a trend of people not
Yeah,
using smartphones as
I
much.
get it.
Yeah.
Well, and I was even thinking about like, I don't need to be like I can check my messages once a day. I could check my email once a day. You know what I mean? Like, I think you don't realize how often you look at all of that stuff.
Yeah. And so, and it depends on your
Like,
situation. Like for you, you don't necessarily need
yeah,
to. For me, like in this acting
yes,
world, it's like you have an audition tomorrow and you got to confirm
yeah,
within the hour
yeah,
or two or something. So
yeah,
like I do
yeah,
a frequent like scan of my emails. But then what I
Yeah.
am very aware of is that even though I'm scanning, I'm taking in like headlines, and that's exhausting to me, especially during a
Yeah.
political year, but
Yeah.
we're not
Yeah.
talking about that. So I'm just okay. So the phone is insane. And then what was number three or number
Yes.
two or number
Well, the
20?
other three, it was three. Yeah.
Okay.
Number 12. I just always think it's really interesting. I had a friend visiting town who we ended up having this really lovely long conversation. And she starts talking about some of her relationship issues and some of just like her health issues, framing it through the lens of addiction.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, how this is so interesting, where I'm just getting clear about, how I could maybe frame this new thing. And it was so funny because she point blank asked me what I thought. And I kind of was able to be like, well, this is sort of goes in line with what I'm talking about with this new project. And I was able to, it was so beautiful. Like the universe, the world, whatever. It was like 5 or 6 days later of like reframing and thinking about this new thing and getting more creative insights around it. Someone was like, hey, I'm addicted to XYZ. What do you think? And I was like, it made me articulate and think and make new connections in a really beautiful way that like put some things together for me.
Yeah.
And then the following day, to sort of tie a bow on this, I went to my doctor who put me on the liver detox that helped like open up my creative channel further, who put me on the Epstein-Barr medication that's made me really a lot more aware of what's been going on physically in my body and a lot more aware of like the jaw stuff.
Yeah.
And I've started to feel a lot like much better than when I first started seeing him finally. And he was like going through and kind of giving me a clean bill of health in a lot of areas. But then he was like, your kidneys. And then, oh my God, it's like, you can't make this shit up. He just looks at me, he goes, talk to me about your relationship to fear. Has anything been coming up for you lately around fear?
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, actually. And we had this really lengthy conversation about that. And, he was like, I think you could see a hypnotherapist once and like help remove like, I don't know. Well, so that'll be to be continued, but
Yeah.
it was very interesting and sort of affirming in some way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think to really put a bow on this is the question is, do you feel like from this retreat that did not turn into a horror movie, do you feel like you have finished this project, or you're closer to kind of figuring out the next step? How do you feel in this? Because you're creating a formula, so to speak. And you were blocked. And so this was part of the listening and going, and now granted, just growth and process in general. Do you feel as though you have insight into the final kind of stage of this, or is there still more listening to do?
I think that it all has to what the next step is. And this is really interesting because I've read this before, whether it was Gene Keys or Human Design or whatever. And this has sort of been the truth. It's, I only teach what I've learned.
Uh-huh.
That has been my career. Yeah. And this fear part, I think, is the last part of unblocking. Because when you think about it, and I notice, right, when people get to this point where they're really clear about what they want or the next steps, and maybe that's leaving the relationship, or maybe that's starting the company or leaving the job or whatever, when we get to the bottom of where the discomfort is through those feelings, through the void, then it's always the fear. And then I'll have people for a year or two just working through the fear because I didn't understand how to help people transform fear in a quicker way, right? Okay. It's just sort of like grit and bear it and push through until you feel like you have to. And for better or worse, and at this point, I'm so unattached to what it looks like. Like it would be nice if it came through in I'm like excited and I put a lot of work into it. But I mean, if I know anything, I know nothing. You know what I mean? Like life is much bigger plans for me half the time.
Sure.
And so my job right now, well, what I came out of it, because I had a pretty vivid dream and it was really interesting. I got some insights like at the very end. And I came out of it really feeling like I need to be writing about my
Stop.
whole journey around this. And yeah.
Watch Beating the Table.
Oh, sorry. You're right. You're right. You're like, please don't make that noise. And I'm
I
like,
can hear it. Just
a
it
monkey.
negates what you're saying. So yeah.
That, gosh, what did you just? I was so passionate
If
about
there's
banging on the
anything about
table.
what the one thing you know is that you know nothing, and so the
Yes.
formula, does it still look what you thought it was going to look like? Do
Right,
you
right,
know
right.
what this
So
step is?
I think the fear piece is the last piece, really, because because really at the core, it's disconnection and yeah, people like taking people from disconnection to connection, from suffering to optimization, or from like kind of lack of understanding and clarity to clarity. And the last piece is, because you are the only one who knows, right? You are the only one with your specific gift. It's so many people can't even get to that point of like that knowing and trusting of themselves, or listening to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's, do you trust yourself enough to follow through? And like, I think that is the piece that I'm getting more clear on, because that was the end piece where I was like, well, I'll get to that and it'll fill itself in. And I didn't realize it would fill itself in through me having like a healing transformational part, but
You
that's
had to
like been
do
my
it. Yeah,
whole professional life anyway. So it makes
exactly.
sense.
Exactly.
Right. So I came out of it with this real feeling of, okay, I need to talk about it and I need to write about it. And like every day I just need to create space to like understand my relationship to this and continue. And I often, like, through talking and through writing is how things get clear for me, which is basically why Aaron early on was like, get a podcast or do something, like this will
Right.
help you.
Mm-hmm.
And with writing, I came back, like, I think on Saturday, we came back on Friday, I wrote like 9 pages, just like processing what was happening and getting really clear
Yeah.
on like what. So I'm in this stage of like, it's being developed every day through, but I'm back. I have creative energy again. The last part is still taking form.
Sure.
So, I
Sure.
mean, it's like the ending's not totally there yet, but now I'm like working on it, where
But
I,
you
for a
seem
number of
like
months,
you're in it, versus before it was
yeah. Oh,
still
very
question
much,
mark,
very much.
and you're in it. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So this
Okay.
last part of really overcoming, but of course, like, isn't life perfect like this? It's like, oh, is it that this is a part of it, or did you just really need to learn how to overcome your own personal fear and trust
Of
yourself?
course. Of course. But I mean, this is part of it, right?
Right, right.
Because
And
you
it's
can only
kind of
help by
like,
what you know. I mean, you can
right,
help beyond that.
right.
But yeah.
And as we always, it's very easy to think about life in terms of destination and product and end results,
Results. Yeah.
right? Where I'm just trying for the first time to be really surrendered and trusting and listening to myself, and like, and following through with my creativity with a real non-attachment to what it looks like at the end, knowing
Yeah.
that already this year on this journey, I've grown so much from this project coming through me. So I just want to
Yeah.
continue to get out of the way.
Yeah. It's beautiful to watch. And
Thank you.
oof,
Thank you.
oof. It's exciting. I'm excited. Obviously, I'm number one
I
fan.
am too. I'm
Even though I
excited.
don't
And
do
I
what you
really
tell me.
felt like, but the thing about you, and you allowed me to learn something really, really, you specifically have taught me something really important about this, right?
Do tell.
Because with the formula, I really felt like it was like, oh, and I think you sort of have gotten there, but you're coming into the formula. You came into the formula before the formula existed.
Right.
So you started to work your way through the formula before the formula existed. So then when I look at you and I think about the formula being like, okay, we really look at optimizing your, you know, your physical body. And like, we know that you know what to do. Do you always
Yeah.
do it? No.
No.
Right.
No.
But you have been really good about your mental and emotional health this whole
For
time. Right.
sure. For sure.
And those are the things that take us away from our inner knowing, our inner wisdom. Those are the things that disconnect us. People can be disconnected physically, mentally, or emotionally, or all three. And a
Yeah.
lot of people are. Like a lot of people who are coming to my program were. And you can come in at any level. The point that is going to you know, keep you healthy, happy, on purpose, like create whatever you want in life is going to be that connection to yourself.
Mhm.
And you have such a strong inner voice that we've really cultivated in the past couple of
Yeah.
years. We've really, like, you know, thinking about like an overgrown garden, right? We've started to like cut back the trees and take out the weeds, and there you
Yeah.
are, right?
Hmm.
And if we really look at like where you are, it's like, yeah, you're not perfect with what you do, but you know enough not to be scrolling and eating the candy late into the middle of the night. You know that doesn't work for you.
No.
And you know that, you know, when you're not moving and not going out into the world, that's not great for you. And we
Exactly.
know when you're not working with me or Ching or both, that, you know, there needs to be some sort of outlet for you to like ruminate and right. And
Absolutely.
when you have a toolkit, is it perfect? No, but no one says it's perfect for right now. It's perfect for
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
right? Because this toolkit of your physical, mental, emotional that you have, that you've built, that we've built together, allows you to connect really strongly to your inner wisdom. And you've been trusting that more, and it's been showing up more, and things have been showing up more. But truly, you and I are kind of in the same growing pain, right?
Yes.
Doing different things, but in this same phase of growth that is, ooh, can we really trust it? Ooh, can we really lean into the way that we do life and trust that it's going to be right? And ooh, can I overcome the fear? And it's so funny to me that while I was offline, we both had perspective shift around fear,
Boy, we did. We did. We did.
right? Right?
Yeah.
And that's a testament to you, right? And so I do really believe, and I've gotten to this point where I love working with individuals, but now I've been in this space for 10 years. I worked with tons of students. I worked with like my program with tons of women. I really actually truly believe in the framework, and that this is a simple thing that if I create it in the right way can help so many people connect to themselves and really learn how to disconnect from the numbing, to get through the pain, to connect and
Yeah.
get clarity, and then to build the trust to put themselves out in the world to create that beautiful life that is only yours, right? And I
Hmm.
was having a really interesting discussion yesterday with a client who was talking to me about this book, The Comfort Crisis, that she's reading.
Okay.
And I think this is a real thing, especially in the US, and obviously not all over. It's a place of privilege. But
Right.
so many people, and I found myself there, settle for a comfortable C plus life, maybe,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And you get there, right? You go to the school, you do what your parents say to do, you do what you did, you look at what society and TV and magazines and your peers are doing. You do that, you can give yourself a pretty comfortable, maybe a B minus B life, right?
Yeah.
But that life, that big juicy life that is like beyond your wildest dreams, that is just specific to you, that allows you to make the art or write the book or find the partner or go on the vacation or build the house, that's the juicy thing we're connecting you to. And the cool thing about this, because I came to this in survival, being a sick person mentally and physically, you know,
Yeah.
anxiety, depression, bulimia, autoimmune. This came from survival. This came from me just trying to be okay and stop shitting blood and throwing up my food. And in the
Exactly.
end, what it's created is this incredible framework, or what I've learned or what I've been shown is the same thing that will optimize your physical, mental, emotional health, can lead you down the path of building this life of your wildest dreams that everyone deserves, but only you know what it looks like. But if you
Yeah.
don't know yourself and you're not brave enough to go inside, feel, listen, trust, and make that first step, you'll never know because you're the only one who knows.
Yeah. But going internal is scary and
Yes.
fearful.
Yes.
So a lot of us avoid it.
And this is right. And this is, I think, why this fear piece is so big and last that I have to overcome for myself. And so much of like, I feel like I've done everything so I can synthesize the information really simply to be like, guys, it's actually a lot easier than we think. Like, you don't have to
Yeah.
do 15 years of therapy necessarily. You don't have to read, nutrition and diet books for 20 years. You
God,
don't
please no.
have to do, you know what I mean? Like, let me distill
Or
it down to what
yeah.
I've watched work for the past 10 years.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is this is going to be a system that can live with you as you continue to grow because and if we bring it back to are you aging or are you evolving?
Mm-hmm.
As you evolve, you will again and again come up against the disconnection, the fear. And then we will have health crises in our
Of
lives as
course. Yes,
things will
unfortunately.
happen, but this
Yeah.
is a framework to come back to you because
Yeah.
you are the only one who knows.
I'm sorry. Close the book.
That was two
That's it.
hours. Right. Should I throw the mic on the ground?
Throw the
Or just
mic on the
knock it over?
ground. Walk away. No, Lord, girl. It's very exciting. All of it is very exciting and overwhelming and scary, but in the best way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for being a space and honestly, this wouldn't even be a podcast if you hadn't followed through with your gifts.
Bless. Yeah.
It wouldn't. And
It's
I
so much
wouldn't.
of,
Go ahead.
well, there's going back to what you were saying before about how you even started doing the program. It's like just being open and just kind of mentioning and sharing, like, oh, what if this? I could help you with that. And then that connection after
Yeah.
that, it's like it's just being open and sharing what you can do. And like they were saying, like with that, with the class of this is what I need, what can people, or what I can offer
Yeah.
to other people,
Yeah.
community, working
Yeah.
together.
Mm.
That was not a thought out sentence, but I'm just reiterating things that you said that I think are good. Please, I'm
That's why
acknowledging
you're
that
here, though. We love you.
I make no sense, but I'm just at least pointing out statements that were made. I have like three thoughts. One was there's a dear friend of mine who she is so brilliant, so creative, and she does like a goal brunch at the beginning of every year. She does it like both for if you want to do more professional and also more personal. And it's not, yes, that seems like result driven, but it's more of like just kind of resetting yourself and being,
Mhm.
you know, focused and considering yourself and what you want to be and do. And she always,
Goals are
when we
great.
do this, yeah, it's wonderful. She always has us when we're going around kind of at the end of these to say, this is what I'm looking for, and this is what I can offer. And so it's very nice because it's like, okay, what are things that I can offer to other people? And then also, I do need help with something. I can't do this by myself in general, so it's like, and that also really pinpoints when you are asked to ask for help. It also helps you realize, okay, yeah, no, I could use help with this versus just head in the sand going forward, taking care of everything yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Again,
It's
I don't know what I'm saying, but yeah.
no, I completely agree. And I think setting goals is great as long as you allow yourself to grow, enjoy the growth as much as the goal,
Of
right?
course. And that's very
And
much her as well. Yes.
yeah, and I think that asking for help, that's like another big thing that
Ooh, boy.
and I was pointing this out to Luciana, I was like, listen, because she kind of was doing like, whoa, I don't know why I want to read this so much and study this. And I was like, I want you to look at and listen to that urge that
Yeah.
is inside of you that really wants you to study and read this. I want you to know that that's right, and
Yeah.
be unattached to why, but know that in you wanting to read and share and study this week, you helped me unlock something.
Yeah.
And it was just further evidence of like, truly, guys, whatever it is that you feel really called to do, that you love, that lights you up, I need it. Claire needs
Yeah.
it. Your mom needs it. You
Yeah.
will make our lives better. Like, it does not, we are in this new place where it's like, you don't have to hate your job, right? You don't have to
No.
feel bad about what, you know what I mean?
No.
Like, moving forward, what you feel called to do is going to make the world a better place.
It is.
But you got to be brave enough to do it.
Yeah. Okay, last thing, and then we will wrap this up. I
Yes.
just confirming with the gene keys. Is this something
Yes.
that, I mean, obviously with human design, like there's plenty of places and, you can find out information. This is definitely a more involved thing. But
Yes.
how does one find out what their gene keys are? And is it something like it requires a bit more study than I think human design? I mean, you can get crazy
Yes.
in human design, but there's also like, top level, just kind of projector generator stuff that's fascinating.
Yes.
But with gene keys, can the layperson just look into it?
Yes. There is a free app called Triple Flame that you
Girl,
can download.
don't tell me this is some twin flame cult bullshit.
No, it's not. Triple Flame. And then the book is called, I think, The Gene Keys, Embracing Your Higher Purpose.
Okay.
And then there's a lot of free content that he puts out. How can I think, let's see, how to read your, I don't know. She did it for me, but I think you have to put your, how do you, that's a good.
Triple flame timer?
Yeah,
Gene Keys
it's got like, looks
Publishing.
like a flame.
Okay.
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
but I don't know. Learn more about spheres and lights. How do you read your, where do you find your, that's a great. Well, maybe I'll try to find the link and we can put it in the show notes because,
and the
I
I Ching is
free
another.
profile. Yeah, the I Ching, that's an ancient Chinese philosophy book.
I Ching,
Okay.
but that's spelled correct?
I, and then Ching, yes, separate.
Right, but it is I Ching. Okay.
New to the Gene Keys. That's a great, okay. Well, there's a free way because I know I was talking to a friend about it and she found her profile.
Yeah.
So we'll find it and put it in the show notes.
No one needs to spend any money initially on this.
No. And it's nice because I think with that, like, it's so interesting. His whole thing, and I actually believe it, is like, even in reading it and thinking about it, you start to change. And it starts to, because again, like what we bring awareness to changes things. And it's nice because it really is almost like, with ancient, like the I Ching or the like Taoism, it's the non-doing. It's more emphasized on being and thinking, and it's not so Western, like, right? It's something that's like a lot more soft, but like, it's so, like, to me, it's been blowing my mind how much just the contemplation, thinking, talking about it has given me big shifts versus like, I'm going to do and write and make notes. And you know what I mean? It's really wild. Triple Flame is the app, and it's a lot about like contemplation. But if you go to the resources, there's like videos and audios that are free. And there's like a whole thing that's like new to the Gene Keys where he talks about it. And I know he adds new audios, and he's British, so he has a really nice voice. He's like this British poet.
Listen, as an American, we're suckers for a British accent.
We really are. Anyway, guys, thank you. Well, thank you, Claire. Thank you, everyone. Welcome to, this is going to be a different season, a very different season. This is a season that is a bit more, I think, authentic to where I am in my path, and a bit more vulnerable for me.
Yes.
And even if no one listens to it, I think even sharing, creating it and sharing it with you has been a really beautiful, I know I'm not supposed to say that, but I'm just saying it's been this has been a brave thing that I'm proud of myself for sharing,
Good.
because I've been, you know, I think there's a part of me that really holds on to the old way of doing and being, and transitioning into a more creative space around my business and just how I live my life in further surrender with, more trust in myself and just in the unknown is scary. And talking about it is scary because on some level in my brain, it makes me think people will take me less seriously. But if they do, they're not my people, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And that
So
can be
can't
said for all of
really.
us, right?
Yeah,
In
yeah,
every
yeah.
aspect. You
Yes,
can't
yes.
say something wrong to the right person.
You can't. You really can't.
Right.
So here we go. Next
Here
phase.
we go.
Thank you guys for listening. And wait, before we end, Claire, how are you
Yes,
loving through it in this moment?
darling. How am I loving through it in this moment? Um, the first, yeah, I'm getting back through to my morning meditation and morning pages.
Yes.
I'm
Great.
getting back to that. I'll go through periods. I was like, the last time I did my morning pages was July 1st. So, but I think honoring myself in the morning is more preventative.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, so I'm not
Yeah.
having to go through a crappy. But like last night, I was in a crappy place and I was like, okay, it's because of all of this. And that's
Hmm.
okay. I
Yep.
know why. And
Yep.
we won't live with it. We won't make this get worse. We'll just
Yeah.
know that, okay, this isn't a bigger deal because I'm depressed or whatever.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
because I'm treating myself poorly. What about you?
Well, I wanted to make a
Oh,
note
yeah. Sorry.
just for other people. Claire does her more. You're still doing it like speaking, right? Auditorily.
I've changed. I'm doing a little bit
Ooh,
different.
I
So
love.
after therapy, sometimes I
Hmm.
need to continue and I'll talk it out. And so
Hmm.
I have a Google folder like on Google Drive. And so
Hmm.
I will talk to text
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
way. But in the morning, I have shifted from after my kind of rebirth, if you will.
Hmm.
I do write. So I
Amazing.
yeah. So I don't write for very long, but I write enough to like get it out of my
Hmm.
head. And I'm usually like telling myself something by the end of it. And then it's like, okay, sometimes it'll be 4 pages, sometimes it'll be half a page, but it's just
Perfect.
something that after meditation, I do.
I love. Well, I just wanted to share it because some people I
Yeah.
know are resistant to journaling, and for a long time, Claire was just
Yes.
speaking it out loud, which is a beautiful way to do it. Also,
And I still like to do that, but I think it's, yeah, I've switched over a little bit to that, but I go back and forth.
great, perfect, right, and I love that too. Where with the morning routine, just do what feels right that day. Let's not
Yeah.
be Nazis about
Yeah.
it. Like I think people can really get themselves in trouble being like, "I love doing this." No, what do I need
That's
today? That's the best question you can
Well,
ask.
that's the thing. It's like I haven't, and I've done a few smaller meditations, but then just my brain was already going crazy, and I was like, I can't write. Like, forget it. So,
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah. So I'm not getting upset with myself. I'm just like, yeah, it's got me. I feel good. I also started reading at night again, which is
Amazing.
very exciting for me.
What are you reading?
Yellowface.
Say, what is
Say
it?
more. It is. Well, I have just started. It's been quite the bestseller. I think the option has already been purchased. I think probably by Reese Witherspoon, and they're making it into a movie, of course.
Of course.
But it's about these two authors and one who is of Asian American descent. I mean, no spoiler. It happens at the very beginning. Dies, and then this like brunette, like it's essentially taking on to have the success, but it's like
Hmm.
it's interesting. It's interesting.
Cool.
But it's,
I
yes,
love.
it's a bestseller. I'm late to the party. Everyone's been talking about it for a few months. So
You recommend. It's
I
good thus far.
recommend,
I love.
yes,
I love.
not a few
I know.
months, like a year. Hmm.
I mean, I only just read Lessons in Chemistry and I really enjoyed it. And that's like years late to the party.
Listen,
But I
we
don't
get
read
to it when
fiction
we
very
get to it.
often.
Yeah,
We
you
do.
don't read
We do.
fiction. Not
No,
so
not
much.
really.
No.
I how am I loving through it is this new practice of just trying to accept and let go
Yeah.
instead of doing more. It's like, how do I do less but more intentionally? How do I let go and flow and surrender versus push?
Yeah.
And finally, like, how do I really listen? It was interesting. Like, I was sharing this new thing a couple months ago with, the gut health girl that I was going to have as part of the thing when I was going to
Yeah.
make the whole formula like, full of experts and a lot of science.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then that was an iteration that she and I met this woman. It was just one of those kismet timing things where she was
For
incredible.
sure.
And I had already decided like extra science isn't actually what people need. It's sort of
Yeah.
streamlined tools and really specific things.
For sure.
But I met her. We were planning to have lunch. We get together. We kind of open up about everything. And she agrees with me. She's like, people don't need this. People that need exactly what you are offering. And I really open up in a way that, felt a little vulnerable. And she was really receptive. And we left. And she was like, just be careful while you're building this. Don't share it with just everyone, like the
Hmm.
ins and outs, because while you're understanding and like being brave and being creative and figuring it out, like the wrong person can really like shut you down. And
Yeah.
it was funny because I had two moments last weekend, and one, I just didn't feel ready to go out and socialize and be in the world, but I
Yeah.
did because of like previous plans and obligation.
Sure.
And I found myself sharing it with the wrong people were who just were coming from a more negative, skeptical place.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
as a creative, it was like I felt very tender and bad about myself
Oh.
for like 12 hours.
Yeah.
And then the next day ended up sharing with that one girl who was like, help, and da 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 da. And all of a sudden it was like, she asked me the right questions. I had everything she needed. I saw her 2 days later before she left. And she was like, thank you so much. You're already making such an impact. I'm going to do all these
Yeah.
things. Like, it's exactly what I needed to hear. But it was a really interesting juxtaposition for me, like not listening to that subtle whisper of like, just stay home, where I was like,
Yeah.
no, be fun. You've been gone. And then putting myself in a position where I'm sharing it in the wrong space that makes me feel a little bit
Right.
vulnerable and bad about myself, versus 24 hours later where it's like the exact right person who was like, thank God, oh my God, I can't believe you had exactly what I need here. Thank you.
Yeah.
Please, like, please let me like buy your lunch because you've helped me. And it's like, whoa, when I listen to me, everyone wins. And when I don't, like, and then
Mm.
in the non-listening, Lucy and I went, and then I didn't feel good, and then I was not fun to be around for like
No,
12 hours, 24
exactly.
hours.
That's a
Right? So
thing.
I make everyone else shitty too. Like I feel bad, and then
Yeah.
everyone in my immediate. No, and I was trying to keep it
What's
together, but I just felt
worse?
really bummed. Yeah.
It's so annoying. Listen, I've been that person that didn't want to be there, and I'm a fucking sourpuss.
Yeah.
Like, no one
Yeah.
has fun when, listen to you.
Yeah.
Listen,
Yeah. No,
you don't
I'm
want to
not.
be there, don't
And
go.
I was like,
And
I
don't
got back. I
force
was
someone to go somewhere if they don't want to,
right.
because you'll be
No.
miserable too.
No, no. And that was the thing. I was in my head. I was like feeling really like second guessing. And I was like,
Yeah.
this is not the space to share like a half birthed idea.
No.
Do it on a
No.
podcast.
Do it on a podcast. Because
Do it on
listen,
your own podcast.
put it out there in the ether, and then people can respond or not.
Exactly.
Or
Exactly. And
take
if
what
it
they
doesn't
want.
resonate, I don't need to
It doesn't
do
resonate.
anything
It's
about
okay.
it.
You don't need to know. I love it. Okay.
Oh, thank you, Claire, and
Thank you,
for being on
Lianna.
this journey. Thank you, everyone. And I hope there were tidbits in here that help you love through your life a bit easier. And more to come. Love you all.
Love you.